for it. It's not a good sign when it actually says, like, this Hangout is on air live. Hangouts on air is going away August 1st.
Okay, at least we know now that this show can run no longer than 6 hours.
Oh, God.
Hi, everybody on YouTube. Hello, everybody. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Mr. Andre Harrison. We're not quite live recording the show per se yet. I'm sure we'll edit it down in post-production or whatever. But we just wanted to say hi, basically. Hi guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, of course. I'm with, of course, my beloved co-hosts, Mr. Ryan Eric King and Mr. RJ O'Connell. Say hello, say hi, gentlemen.
Oh, hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 200 of Gillette's Soccer Saturday, because we're recording this during the England-USA semifinal game. It's 43 minutes in, and the USA leads 2-1 as of this time and moment and space.
It took all the restraint in the world not for me to bust out the USA shirt today.
I still have my USA jersey in my wardrobe, which I will wear if England lose the game.
This is important.
No, I will do that because I'm a good sport.
I consider this Italian national team wear. Okay, I'm being impartial just for the sake of this podcast.
Oh Lord.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh dear. Also here in spirit, one of our beloved co-hosts, Miss Zoe Hamilton, who's decided to heckle me via text message. Because of course she has. Yes. And I quote, she sent me a belter 7 minutes ago when she said, "So it's like a proper podcast recording session, it's running late." Because of course it is. Right. Okay, so we've already got our audio synced up ready to go, so we're just going to start whenever we feel like it. So that'll be in the next 2 minutes or so. But hi to everybody in the YouTube chat as well. We hear you. Much appreciated. Thanks for joining us on this special occasion. I see Toki, I see Kelly, I see Rezi in there. Hi, John T. Nice to see you. Shout out to all the guys at the F1 Word.
Oh fuck! There's going to be a VAR?
Hi, James.
Oh my God, no!
Oh God! Is there a VAR review to end the half? Really? Oh, sorry, I'm already ahead of you. My bad, King. No, there isn't going to be a VAR check. Just take my word for it on this one.
Okay. Okay.
The nature of having it live on the TV here and being like a minute ahead of King, who hasn't got it on TV himself.
Yeah, because if I tried to have it on TV, this episode of the show would be cut extremely short.
Yeah, we probably get taken down by via copyright infringement.
Love you, FIFA. Mean it. We actually don't love you, FIFA.
No, we don't. Not in the slightest. But of course, I hope you guys enjoy the show. Feel free to chip in the in the YouTube comment section. I will try to get as many takes as I can in the recording as we go along. Thank you very much for joining us as always on this very special show. And shout out to all the guys in the Discord chat as well for more audio opinions here in the long. Thanks, guys, as well. I do see you all in there with various degrees of fuck the FIAs, your Discord names. That's I can't say you're wrong, but I'm just saying it's there as an observation. Much appreciated. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy the show. Thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, without further ado, we will get started very, very shortly. RJ, if you have to speak now, for a hold your peace.
I honestly don't have I have nothing for an intro. I actually, I feel like, Dre, this should be yours since, of course, this is your show.
I guess it would only be fitting if it was I, Dre Harrison, who lead us in for the 200th episode. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, give me a sec. Just distracted by Hope Solo being a BBC pundit. It's a very weird sight from the corner of my TV. Oh dear. Okay. Here we go, folks. You know what, Lewis? I see you in the chat there. That's genius. I see what you did there. Okay, gotcha. Ladies and gentlemen, it is all to play for the 200th time. Welcome to Motorsport 101, and it's live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 200th episode of Motorsport 101. Hey, everybody. We are live streaming this on YouTube as we speak. Me, RJ, and Ryan King. A very special occasion. It is the 200th episode of Motorsport 101. Thank you all so much for joining us here on this one. I can't wait to get into it with all of you. It's a very, very special occasion. We can't wait to get into it. We thought we'd go live for our 200th show. And of course, we've got a very special main event feature coming up later on as well, which we'll get into briefly. But first of all, say hello, gentlemen.
Yeah, glad to be here. 200 episodes. I actually think due to your more recent absences, I've actually been on more episodes of the show than you, Trey.
You know what? One of these days, I'm sure someone in our Discord server will probably go back, click through every episode and figure out just how many appearances we've had on each show. But I actually think you may be right on that one, King. I actually think you might have more appearances than me due to work-related commitments. It's certainly close. I will say that much. And hello, RJ as well. Hello, sir.
Hey, y'all. Hey, I can remember the first time I got invited to be on as a guest of the show. One thing led to another, and now I'm a permanent co-host and also the editor-in-chief of the podcast. Mm-hmm. I don't know what exact sequence of events led me to this point, but I can tell you that there's one person, and we wanted to have him here. He was my predecessor, Adam Johnson, who is here with us in spirit. Wanted to be here, couldn't make it, unfortunately. I hope you're getting a feeling better, Adam, because without you, without your contributions in the first several episodes, this podcast, I don't think we'd be here.
Indeed, I think Johnson was a major influence on us. I think he did about 50 shows of us. I think it was roughly 24 to something like 75, if my rough memory serves. I can't give you the exact figure on that, but I think it's something along the lines of 40, 50 shows. And of course, a absolutely massive contributor to this show. Sadly, he couldn't make it here on this one. But of course, get well soon, Adam. We're all with you. And of course, thank you for being a small part of this show's incredible history. This is like we are basically going through the going through the motions of we're coming up towards nearly 5 years of shows now as well, which is crazy. It'll be our 5th anniversary, I believe, early October. It was the day after the 2014 Russian Grand Prix was the very first episode. Our mics were terrible. It was just me and Ryan, and we basically shithoused it. And 200 episodes later, we are still pretty much shithousing it, only in slightly better quality and with a slightly bigger audience. We're very, very grateful for that. Of course, like I said, we are live on YouTube. Shout out to everyone in the YouTube chat. There's 30 of you listening along right now. Thank you very much. All you guys in there, I see guys like Cam, like Rezi, Joe, Toki, our beloved Bike Life co-host, Mr. Lewis Sotheby, is in there as well.
Lewis is here.
Yes, Lewis is here. Again, great friend of the show. Obviously, the Bike Live wouldn't be what it was without him. We're very, very glad he's here with us as well. A bunch of guys who are Patreon backers for us as well. And we've got a donation to read out as well. From Brian Glennon as well. He's actually dropped $2 in our super chat saying, we tied Richard Petty on his 82nd birthday.
Yeah, and we didn't have to lump in the Bike Live podcast episodes to get there. We got to 200 the right way.
200 pure, unfiltered episodes. We gotta love it. You know, we can't complain in the slightest. We couldn't miss it in the slightest. Massive thanks to Lewis as well, Andrew Bannister, all you guys in there as well. We'll do more big tribute stuff at the end of the show because we have to press on a little bit. I don't want to keep you guys here till 11 p.m.
We're hard capped at 6 hours, by the way. So we wanted to go all night. We cannot. Thanks, Google Hangouts.
Yes, King. Remember this time we can't go over 8 hours. Are we clear?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Also, the people in the chat have to know, why is the porn stash back?
Thought it'd be. It was a special occasion. Knew it was coming up.
He brought it back for the 200th show.
Don't worry. The people who'll see me at the New York City Prix, it won't be a thing. It'll be gone. It's special occasions only.
Beautiful. What a beautiful contribution that is. Also, in the super chat as well, thanks Andrew Bannister for the £2 donation, sir. Thank you very much indeed. If you really, really like us and you want to back us by doing that, click the $sign in the super chat icon below. Please, don't go out of your way to do it, but that's very, very kind of you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can also, support us on Patreon. It's probably cheaper.
Yeah, just a little bit, Also, in spirit, who's not quite here tonight with us directly, but she is here in spirit, Zoe Hamilton, another massive contributor to the show, is basically chipping in via text messages over the course of the show. So I'll stop to read some of these out as well, including, and I quote, "The podcast can go to school now." So like a proper podcast recording session, it's running late. This is also a very true story. And I quote, "I thought he was trying to beat Graham to Bobby stash."
No. That's too easy. That's far too easy.
We have had many super substitutes on our show, but
Indeed.
Nobody can imitate or duplicate Zoe Hamilton, for my opinion.
Completely agreed, Zoe. So many times when we felt like we needed a third or even a fourth voice, Zoe was always there to answer the call. One of the most devout, dedicated IndyCar fans we know. Just generally a good egg and wise head regarding all things motorsports. The age, wisdom, experience, all that good stuff. We are very, very grateful for Zoe as well. We love you, Zoe. Thank you for everything, darling. And there's always a space back here if you want it, as far as I'm concerned. Also, good news, King. They actually are digging the porn stash in the chat. So, you're actually you're kind of indicated on this one. Places you can find us real quick. We are on, right here, live right now on YouTube. At youtube.com/motorsport101. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out some videos and all that good stuff that we are.
Click the bell for notifications as well.
Indeed, do that. Exactly. So all of that. Or YouTube, subscribe if you're here. Why not? I might actually make some videos every once in a while. Facebook.com/Motorsport101. We're on Twitter at Motorsport_101. And you can follow our personal handles literally right down below. We've got them in our name tags. Thanks, Ryan King, for the graphical adjustments on that one. All personal handles are all there. Harrison101HD, at RJ O'Connell, and at Ryan Eric King. You don't even need help on the spelling on this one. That's also very, very useful indeed. If you'd like to, also if you really, really like us and like us to back us financially, you can do so, as well as obviously on the Super Chat tonight on Patreon, patreon.com/Motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our shows. $10 gets you into the supporters club of our Discord server where you can listen to these shows live as they go out. I know a bunch of guys are listening in right now and having a discussion about it right now. We normally record in the Discord chat at the same time and they'd all chip in the chat. Obviously can't do that this time. They're all over there on YouTube, but thanks for the dedication, you guys. Anyway, a massive, massive thank you to all our Patreon backers over the last, I think it's been about 2 years since we've had the Patreon page up. To go one stage further and to back us financially is wonderful. It covers all the costs for production and covering the website costs, covering the SoundCloud costs on a yearly basis to have a professional account, to be able to have an RSS feed and all that good stuff. So massive, massive thank you to all you guys. It makes this a million times easier to make this show self-sufficient. So very, very grateful for all you guys as well. And of course, All the details, all of this is on our website at motorsport101.com. Again, this show is going to be on all the. We're going to be talking about the Formula One Grand Prix in Austria, of course, and that total penultimate lap disaster, last lap overtake that totally didn't go wrong and wasn't controversial at all. We'll also be talking about a resurgent Carlos Sainz coming through the field, another wretched day at the office for Sebastian Vettel, kind of, sort of, as well, all of that fun stuff, as well as MotoGP in Assen as well. Wasn't quite the all-time classic we were all hoping for, but a nice return to form for Maverick Vinales as Yamaha pick up their first win of the season in a dramatic fashion. Well, it was one, the factory Yamaha made the flag, the other one very much didn't. More on that soon. We'll also be covering the junior classes there, as of course in the Formula One race. And then our main event of the evening, it'll be a Redux, the 2019 edition of the Motorsport 101 top 10 Formula One drivers of all time list. We have all sent King our personal lists. He's taken the average, dialed up the leaderboard, and I still can say for sure, me and RJ genuinely have no idea like who is top of this list. King's dropped a couple of hints, and if you haven't heard it on the Discord server or if you haven't heard it on our chat earlier already, there are 2 ties on this list. There are 2 ties, and he tells me number 1 is very controversial.
No, I didn't say number 1's. Yeah, one of the ties is controversial. I didn't say.
One of the 2 ties.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Grammar coming into play there, very much so. Over the course of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in on this on this 200th edition of Motorsport 101. We will get into it right now with the Austrian Grand Prix. This is the part where RJ inserts the musical break. It's fun.
Yeah, all this will be edited in post, by the way.
Yeah, so music fades out. I come back in. Oh boy. So, fellas, the 2019 Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg. Anyone wants to get a Sound of Music joke in now? Anyone? No? Good. Excellent to hear. Right, so I think it's better if we start with qualifying on this one, fellas? Because this was a topsy-turvy one, to say the least. A lot of spice in this qualifying session. First of all, that's not a silver car on pole. Charles Leclerc on pole position. Like, for once, the Ferrari pace wasn't a catfish. How useful is that? Well, so we thought anyway. But Charles Leclerc on pole position, a 1:03.003, the fastest ever lap of the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg. But there was a drama behind. Like, Lewis Hamilton was initially on the front row, but he had to take a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Kimi Räikkönen during qualifying. Whoops.
Big whoops.
Big whoops. I mean, we saw it on camera. Honestly, I was just sitting there going, hey, a Mercedes actually got punished for something for once. They didn't dodge a bullet on this occasion. I thought that was funny in its own right.
Don't forget as well, because of weird grid penalties and the order of which they were applied, Lewis Hamilton actually got to start. I believe he got to start 4th in this race instead of 5th.
Yes.
Indeed. Because of the way there was a lot of penalties to jumble around. Because of the way penalties are applied, it's a bit like how in the NFL, when you kick a field goal, the posts technically go into the heavens. It's similar to that. The grid basically goes on forever. Like,
so you're penalized grid places, not grid positions.
Right. So, yeah, you basically just imagine, like, beyond the 20 grid spots we've got right now, pretend the grid goes on forever. They are applied, I believe, King, it's in order of time the penalty was given. Yes. But then, of course, there's grid spaces come into play. And then, but when everything is done, you shuffle them all back up into the original 20 again. So as a result, Hamilton technically only dropped 2 places because believe it was it Lando Norris, King, that had to drop down?
Kevin Magnussen took a penalty.
Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah.
And as for Sebastian Vettel,
honestly, it's you guys would expect another rant, aren't you? It wouldn't be a 200 episode of that one, and all I can say is I've given up. I've given up having the emotional investment to rant about this. I think it was some sort of pneumatic issue. I believe it was in Q2 after his lap time had been set, and then as a result of that, he couldn't get a time in Q3. So of course, the one time Ferrari is competitive in qualifying and Charles Leclerc sticks it on pole, Vettel doesn't even get a shot to try and beat him to it. Because of course. So after the penalty, Sebastian Vettel had to had to start from 9th on the grid as opposed to 10th. Because again, as King alluded to, Magnussen had to take a 5-place grid drop, which is a shame because Magnussen qualified 5th outright. And his team went ballistic on the radio, having found out. Yes, he did a 104.0, a clear best of the rest ahead of Lando Norris and Kimi Räikkönen in Q3. He put himself P5, a brilliant effort from the young Dane. So as a result of the way the grid got shuffled around, it was Leclerc from Verstappen on the front and row ahead of Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton, pardon me, sorry. Bit of gas escape in there. Lando Norris in 5th, Raikkonen 6th. And very quietly, both Saubers in the front in the top 7, with Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, his teammate, also making Q3 and qualifying in 7th, ahead of Gasly, Vettel, and then K-Mag in 10th. So, also, I love that I'm getting a text from Zoe saying, the Church of Dre has been demolished. The traveling preaching tent of Harrison will replace it.
But I think that was kind of like the big overarching villain of the weekend, the massive heat wave that has struck Europe that pretty much was one of the things that crippled Mercedes, where if you took any look at their car, they had as many vents and openings in the engine cover and side pods as possible to keep their car cool.
And what's that important phrase we always mention on the show, King? Remember that. It becomes important later.
It really does become important later. Also, I love that the chat right now is, and I quote, comments along the lines of, does the church need opening? The church is on fire. The church is burning. The church was burned down weeks ago. The church burned down after Japan 2017. The church does no longer qualify for no tax status.
Reverend Devon is collecting donations for bricks.
I need to build a super church. I clearly need to build an expansion. It's not pretty, but here we are. We are looking extra strugglicious. I was just like, you know what? It's just not going to be our year this year, is it? It's just like, oh, this is how it's going to have to be. So, race day. And we're on the way. And, oh, wait, that's a very slow-moving Red Bull. Turns out Max Verstappen hits the anti-stall coming off the start line. And he drops all the way down to 9th. I think it was actually 7th place he dropped down to. He dropped 5 places off the start. There was a bit of midfield chaos there. Sebastian found a way around both Red Bulls right off the start, which was excellent for his race to start off with. Again, remember that. It becomes important later. But that was the big drama coming off the opening lap. Verstappen hits the anti-stall, drops down to P7. And like it seemed, at least for the first 20, 30 laps of the Grand Prix, that it was going to be Leclerc versus the Mercedes. But it seemed to be that it's starting Ferrari on the soft tyres for the race was the way to go, because it looks like Ferrari can actually and the soft tyre in general could handle the as Kim mentioned, the extreme heat wave better than Mercedes could. Mercedes couldn't run their optimal engine settings throughout the Grand Prix. They were overheating. They had to do a lot of lifting and coasting to protect the car. And they were largely uncompetitive, which is weird. It seems to me, King, like Austria's become a bit of a bogey track for the Mercedes, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been. Their double retirement this year. I mean, last year,
yeah,
and then their performance this year, it seems like just one of the tracks that it's not like it doesn't suit their car. It's just anytime we end up, getting to that time of year, something out of their hands just happens to just pull a chance at victory away.
That seems to be what it was. Like I said, the overheating car. I mean, we've seen it before. Mercs, if they do have an Achilles heel and it's a very small one, they don't like extreme conditions. If it's very, very hot, if it's very, very cold, they tend to struggle. And this was one of those occasions. Leclerc had a pretty comfortable lead for the vast majority of the race. And all of a sudden, it looked like Sebastian Vettel might have actually come back into play. He'd overtaken the Saubers and Lando Norris very quickly. He was running a net P4. He comes in for an early stop, same lap as Valtteri Bottas was, and they thought, oh, hang on, we could take advantage of this. We've come in at the same time, and they're going to have to hold Bottas in the box because Bottas was about 2-3 seconds ahead. So they can keep Bottas in the pit box, and they can lose time because they've got to wait for Vettel to come through into his pit box, which sounded great. Until it turns out the Ferrari mechanics radio wasn't working. They didn't know there was a pit stop that was about to happen. So, of course, they were late bringing over one side of the car's tires.
Oh, no. The Eddie Irvine Nürburgring 1999 special. Or more recently, Daniel Ricciardo at Monaco 2016. Bummer.
What? Turns into a 6.1 second stop, and that took Vettel out of any sort of contention for the win. And yeah, it was a shitter, to say the least. I was just looking at it, just like I was watching that in my girlfriend's house, and I was in a shit mood for like half an hour after that pit stop. I was just like, why do we bother? Like, what? Like, why do I bother having the boat? Like, who had lap 22 as the lap Ferrari was going to shit the bed again? Because of course it happens. Oh dear.
And that's the thing, though. Like, this was strategically. I know they mis-executed Vettel's first pit stop, but they had the strategy right, and that was the thing we were worried about Saturday. Because remember, on Q2, they set their fastest time on the soft tire. And after qualifying, it was just like, yeah, Ferrari had pole position, but they're starting the race on the wrong tire. And Will Buxton said after qualifying that the margins would be tight. If they pit too soon, they're on the slower strategy. If they pit too late, they hit the cliff with the soft tires, and they'll lose the race.
They seem to get the timing right. The problem was the timing was wrong. Funny that. That wasn't the only pit stop related drama though. Lewis Hamilton had to also pit for a new front wing because he damaged it going over the turn 1 exit sausage curb. I believe it was lap 22 was the lap in question. He'd driven over the sausage curb and they believed that damaged the front wing and the floor of the car. He had to have an 11-second pit stop to change the front wing of the car. I have to say, impressive job from Merckx to change an entire F1 car's tires and front wing in 11 seconds and getting back out on the road. Well played, Merckx, for limiting the damage on that one. I mean, Hamilton was just generally not at the races this time round, but, kind of his own doing on this one, basically. Every old school racing fans have now got a boner because, like, yes, the sausage curbs did their job. They damaged the car, so you don't drive over them. Proper racing, that totally doesn't come up again later. Not in the slightest. But like I said, sausage curbs do job. Hamilton, who'd been running over that damn thing all week, he'd been driving over the damn thing all weekend long. All of a sudden, he goes over. Has to change the front wing over. Drops down to 5th place. And then I get the very straight. Like who else's jaw hit the deck when they put Vettel in the pits again?
I mean, that one was, I know they had the race lost at that point, but that did give them the flexibility to stop him. And it did ultimately work out for them at the end, pitting him on lap 50 to get him out. He eventually would rush his way back up the field, just barely finishing within 0.7 of a second of taking that final podium position off of Valtteri Bottas and splitting the two Mercedes.
What the hell happened to Valtteri's car at the end of that race? Because I could have swore he was like 10, 15 seconds up the road from where Hamilton was. What the hell happened? Obviously, we didn't see it on camera due to something more important that was going on at the time, which we'll get to briefly. But I don't know, like, chat, if anyone knows on that one, let me know. Because, again, I agree with John T in the chat who says, at the time, I figured Seb's second stop was a case of we're boned. Let's go for the extra point, which is what it seemed was. Apparently, going to Cam, Valtteri's car was overheating like a mofo, and they had to slow right down at the end, basically. So, that car was literally about to pop, basically. So I guess that's what does it. But yeah, still a podium for Val on the day. However, Max Verstappen he's one of the last of the front runners to stop off the soft tyre and get on the hard compound tyre. He comes out in 5th. He guns down Sebastian Vettel and passes him. He guns down Valtteri Bottas, overtakes him. All of a sudden, with about 12 laps to go, he's only 6 seconds off Charles Leclerc, who was leading the race. And next thing you know, we got a race on here, folks, because it turns out Verstappen is gunning down Leclerc at over half a second a lap. Like, I don't know what's in the Red Bull in Austria around here, but I have never seen Verstappen drive that quickly. That was insane.
Yeah.
To be gunning. Yeah, go on, King, yeah.
Like, Verstappen qualified second. Like, I knew he had the pace, but his pace at the end of the race compared to Charles Leclerc was astounding. I don't know where it came from.
And keep in mind, I just want to bring up a clarifying point. He started the race on the medium tires. And what helped him get in a position where he could potentially take this win was that he cleared off the guys he needed to clear. He cleared Norris, he cleared Raikkonen, he cleared Gio. All those guys to put only the Ferraris and the Mercedes in front of him.
Indeed. And that certainly helped. So yeah, all of a sudden with 12 laps to go, Verstappen is taking half a second out of Leclerc on the same hard compound tire, and even set the fastest lap of the race as well on hards compared to Vettel, who was running with basically a qualifying fuel tank and the soft tire. Mental stuff. Again, I can't remember ever seeing Verstappen driving like a man possessed, just like this one. Incredible. Of course, at that rate of knots, with about, I'd say, 3 laps to go, he's now right on the back of Leclerc's tail. He's fighting off some of the traffic that's in the way. Okay, 3 laps to go. Verstappen is trying the inside into technically turn 3. It's really turn 2, but
right.
You could debate in the comments about how many corners the Red Bull Ring actually has.
Pocono has 5 corners. Pocono has 5 corners, ladies and gentlemen.
well, if we're on a MotoGP bike, turn 2 is most definitely a turn.
Absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah, like, again, in the cars, maybe not so much. But, okay, 3 laps to go. Verstappen takes the inside. Runs Charles Leclerc wide, but not too wide. Leclerc has the power advantage coming out of turn 3. And has DRS as an advantage, gets back in front into turn 4. We're all sitting here like with tenterhooks thinking, oh my God, are we going to get a last lap battle for the win here in F1? Something that we've probably not seen since this very Grand Prix 3 years ago when it was Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton. King, I think your man was quite shit on that day, but hey, more on that later. Okay. Here's the moment you've all been waiting for, folks. 2 laps to go. Verstappen tries the exact same move again. Switches over to the inside of turn 3 at the last minute. Under braking. Runs really wide this time. Like a good, I would say, 3 or 4 meters off the apex of the corner. Leclerc has to take the escape road to try and avoid contact. There was contact on the exit of the corner as Charles basically has to come back onto the circuit. Verstappen's able to seal the move into turn 4 and then go on to win the Grand Prix. However, the incident was under investigation from the stewards, and then everyone, fans in the media center are like, just groan. Because it's like, oh no, here we go again. For the second time in 3 races, the result could very well be decided in the steward's office. So, what was the reaction like with you guys when we found out, oh no, it's under investigation?
Oh,
I'm
God.
king first on this.
Yeah, my gut reaction was, well, I didn't think they were going to penalize him, but the fact that, like, the fact they made contact, that they had to put it under investigation, that's just the way it works. But the fact it was so late in the race, I knew it's going to take a while for them to come to a conclusion.
Yeah. And it took them 3.5 hours to come up with the results on that one.
Not only in that 3.5 hours, we had a fake document that circulated around on Twitter before we all realized that it was a gag. That's how long it took.
Yeah, a document, like the document did have like 1 or 2 errors on it, which caught it out as fake. But it was so deceiving that it made it onto the FIA medium, like the medium, the press corps there. They have a WhatsApp group, and it made it onto their WhatsApp group, and it got
Benson tried to
circulated.
report this as breaking news.
Yeah,
it was a very, very good fake. In other words, it was a good enough fake where the media center bought it first time round, basically. They had to really look deeply before everybody on Twitter had to come out, no, guys, it's fake, it's 49 and 50. That's the articles in question that regards the incident of them being under investigation. As said, it took 3.5 hours. It wasn't until I was halfway on the train back to London did we actually get an official outcome. No further action on either driver for the incident. Verstappen keeps the win. Of course, it doesn't end there because it's on this show. So, of course, we're going to talk about it. Fellas, now we've had a couple of days to reflect on this, and having seen 115 angles like the stewards, I'm sure would have had to see as well. They've seen the data, the telemetry, all the footage, all the bells and whistles. Do you think they got it right?
Yeah, I think they got it right. That was my first gut reaction. Like when they didn't penalize it. Like for what it's worth, yeah, it was a very aggressive move, but did it break? Was it unsafe, or was it like it? There was nothing definite to like indisputably say that it violated the sporting regulations.
I'll say this. I heard it speculated that the reason why the FIA stewards, of which their guest driver was Tom Christensen, 9-time Le Mans winner, probably should have been a Formula One driver in the late 90s, that the reason why they took so long was to get the fans to clear route. Because there was a former Dutch F1 driver, I believe it's Robert Doornbos, who suggested that the fans should start a riot if they were to take away that victory. I don't know how true that is.
No, Doornbos did say that. Doornbos did say that.
But I don't know how true.
Of course, Robert Doornbos said that.
I don't know how true it was that the fan influence really caused that decision to take too long. Typically, when it comes to a football play under review or an ice hockey play under review or video assistant or VAR, in the case of the game we're watching, by the way, 65 minutes, by the way, the longer it takes, the more likely this is going to get overturned.
Yeah, and to put it into perspective, there was an enormous Verstappen grandstand in the middle of the circuit. They were all already on the pit straight by the time they were investigating and reviewing this. And yeah, I've not seen that much orange since Raymond van Barneveld last played in the Premier League of darts. This was a massive, massive Dutch following in this Grand Prix. Of course, Red Bull home track. Of course, short journey over. Of course, they're gonna rock up in droves. It was about Travis. Yeah, it was all. I think it was about 7:45 p.m. when they finally said no further action. What do I think? I think there's not enough there to overturn it. My gut said to me, that's a penalty. Verstappen, I think, was unnecessarily way off the apex. I think that was very similar to a block pass you would get in MotoGP, where, the guy has no intention of taking the apex whatsoever. And, if you park your bike there, or in this case, park your car there, there is no chance the other guy has any chance of getting around you whatsoever. I think it's a 50-50. I think Verstappen was asking for it by going that far off the apex, but I also think Charles Leclerc probably could have conceded that one a bit earlier. Like, if you're going around the outside of that corner, you have no chance. You are not passing someone around the outside and, oh, look, it's 2-2 in the England-USA game.
Oh, damn it.
Yes! Come on, England! Let's go!
I'm about to see this on my screen because I believe I'm about a minute behind. But I just wanted to say, I didn't have a problem with the stewards' decision. I didn't have a problem with the way that they necessarily raced it with. I can see from Matt's perspective that he did open the steering up on cornerettes a bit more than he should have. And on the other side, I can also see the perspective that, Charles maybe should not have tried in desperation to use the outside tarmac runoff to help defend his position, which I believe both drivers should have been empowered to do that. I believe Verstappen should have been able to attack, and if he is entitled to do so as aggressively as he did, then Charles Leclerc should have absolutely used all the tarmac runoff and then some to try one desperation attempt to keep the position, because that was the only way that he was going to keep that position. On pace alone, Max Verstappen would have run him down in another lap if that move had not happened. And that, I believe, is what irked some people the most about, is that Max didn't need to make that move aggressively. I didn't see no problem. I was just glad that after the race we had in France, that we got an absolute thriller of a finish.
We did. And there's also, by the way, VAR check on the goal, by the way, for a potential offside. That's going to be fun. Oh, it's been overturned. It's been overturned for offside. Damn it.
I feel
dear.
bad for Charles Leclerc in that case, because that's the second time where you feel like he had the win in the bag and something maybe out of his control would have taken it away from him. I feel like that first win is going to come very soon this year, but it just wasn't meant to be. The reality of the situation was they tried to execute that strategy, go from soft to hard tires, and ultimately Verstappen just had more pace on fresher hard tires. That was the big thing that decided the race to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to me. Like I said, I don't believe there was enough on that. Like, if I was a steward, I'd be leaning towards making that a penalty, because I think Verstappen was a little bit OTT on that one. Mm-hmm. However, I can also completely understand why you would let that one go, especially in the context of the race itself. It's a penultimate lap. It's a fight for the win. Of course, they're going to bend the rules. That I'd be more concerned if a driver didn't do that than if they did, quite frankly. Some of these bullshit arguments I was hearing, like, oh, if there was a gravel trap there. No, there isn't a gravel trap. Okay? You're like there is not a gravel trap.
There isn't a gravel trap. And as I just mentioned, I believe Leclerc should have been empowered to use all that tarmac runoff if that's what was going. Yeah, exactly. Especially in the last few laps of the race. It's there. Use it.
Yeah. As I said it before on Twitter, we don't give drivers the benefit of the doubt when it comes to going over the top, when it comes to things like sausage curbs. Mm-hmm. Because, when the sausage curb topic came up, and Christian Horner was like, oh, it cost our car £250,000 worth of damage. Like, the general response I saw on the internet was, oh, well, just drive around it then. Like, these are racing drivers. They are going to try and take every liberty they can afford to take. And that is not something I think is an unfair expectation of them. If we can't keep pasting these guys as heroes and gladiators in this exceptionally volatile sport, and then don't expect them to take a liberty if they can see one in front of them, that's the nature of the sport. I just find it weird that we didn't give them the benefit of the doubt for going over the curbs and track limits, but we do when it comes to defending them hard for a race victory. Like, where's the and again, it's the running theme of Canada going back to this as well. Where's the consistency?
Right.
What I would like to see going forward is, where is the line? What is a penalty? How far is too far? I think we need some clearer wording on this, and a more of a less vague terms being used when it comes to this rule. And I would like to see some clearer wording. I fear this may go more down the road of the NFL rules of what are a catch, because they had to add more and more text to this what is a catch rule as the years have gone by. Anyone who knows the NFL will know exactly what I'm talking about here. They've had to add more and more text to the what is a catch rule, to the point where it's now actually made it even more confusing to know what is a catch and what isn't. I would just I know it's a careful line to walk, but that is we nearly had 2 out of the last 3 rounds decided in the steward's office. That is alarming.
3 out of the 4, if you consider Max's attempt to pass on Lewis in Monaco.
Very true, and that was investigated with no punishment for either driver.
Yep.
So yeah, we could have had 3 of the last 4 rounds decided in the steward's office, and that is probably too many. I know a lot of that is obviously coincidence, but
And in the aftermath of this, recently appointed FIA Formula One race director Michael Massey kind of described why it took so long to come to this decision, and a lot of people don't understand all the moving parts to how the stewards get to their decision. And he kind of went step by step about why it took so long. To see. So one of the reasons why they're able, when there's an incident early in the race, and why it's able to quickly be resolved, because number one, they can't hear from the drivers, so that cuts off an avenue of deliberation where it's pretty much just the stewards looking at race footage, maybe talking with team personnel to see from their perspective what happened. But when an incident happens during the closing stages of the race, literally, they're not going to be able to get a decision before the podium is made, and that opens the door from them. That opens the door from them to hear from every single party involved, which is what happened in this situation, where by the time the race was over, they're not able to get a hold of the drivers until they fulfill their other commitments. So they have to do, if they finish on the podium, they have to go to the podium. They have to do the television press pen. They have to do the post-race press conference, and then they can go see the stewards in the steward's office. And it took until 6 p.m. local time for the drivers to get to the steward's office.
Yeah.
And from 6 p.m. local time, they didn't release a decision until 7:47 p.m. local time.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the process. And again, we don't normally get investigations over something so late in a Grand Prix, which I guess is probably part of the reason why it took so long, especially when it was a late race battle for the win, which is the worst case scenario if you're in a steward trying to come up with a quick decision. Which, although we did get that in the Formula 3 race. More on that later.
Well, the direct quote from Massey was, the primary part as to why we didn't get going with the stewards hearing until 6 p.m. because of the various media commitments, television pen, and the post-race press conference. The hearing itself is give or take about an hour with all parties involved. And it continues on. The stewards deliberated. Wow. Deliberated, looked at other cases, precedents, and spoke between themselves. And by the time you write the decision, make sure there are no typos or anything in it, and so forth. And then summon the teams back, delivering this decision to them. It quickly adds up. Because, again, the teams have to be the first person to hear the decision. They can't just release it out into the wild.
Right. Teams need to know in case teams need to appeal and things like that as well. So... little things like that. I mean, Ferrari are very quick to say, no, we're not going to appeal this. We're going to let this one go this time round, unlike Canada. But no, we got the official result. I think it was about 7:45 local time. Verstappen wins, everybody rejoices, and Channel 4 actually got the first interview with Max Verstappen after the stewards decision came out. So, for once, the benefit of Channel 4 being on extended highlights and being off live TV at the moment actually came into good prominence. How useful is that? By the time Sky had already got off the air, Channel 4 was still there, and they were able to interview Max, which I thought was quite a cool touch. Like, directly after the race, because, we got all the usual F1... branded takes of if that's illegal, we all got to pack up and go home. It was like, I will. Right, good hard racing, etc. Like I'm going to, that's the hashtag I'm going to use from now on in case someone mentions the good old days. I'm going to call it hashtag good hard racing, basically, because that's exactly what that narrative comes up so many goddamn times. It's ridiculous.
I didn't have a problem with it. I grew up on American Motorsport where out Zanardi's passed the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Today, it would be a blatant corner cut. In 1996, it was awesome. You think back to the greatest finish in NASCAR history, one of the greatest ones. Brad Keselowski versus Marcus Ambrose and Watkins Glen. They were abusing track limits like nobody's business, and nobody cared.
But I mean, things to a certain degree haven't really changed in IndyCar, because I still remember, I think it might be the most recent race that we had at the Milwaukee Mile back in 2015, where Sebastian Bourdais won the race with an underweight car. He still got to keep the race win. His team was just fine.
Yeah.
And James Hinchcliffe, when he was second in Texas in 2016, who finished in second that race, was allowed to keep the second, but he lost half his race points because his dome skid was too far worn in. So it does happen in that sense, Like,
they penalized Bourdais for making a pass with half a wheel on the yellow line of pit exit at Long Beach.
Still sigh, but yes, Max Verstappen wins. Good for him. Fun times for all involved. And to be fair, he deserved it. It was a magnificent performance from Max Verstappen on that one.
For Honda,
a very good point to mention, because lost in the shuffle of all of this. Honda's first win in Formula One, I believe, since Hungary 2006.
Yes, it was. Their second win in 27 years. Could you imagine in that time span, Mugen Honda had more wins as an engine supplier than Honda proper.
Yeah, like I had literally the same amount of podcasts in that same time as they had wins in my lifetime. 2. So yeah, their first win in 13 years, and you could see the emotions in the Honda camp as they crossed the line. Let's not forget, this team got an absolute plastering for how they started their return in F1. And it's been a long road and a lot of graft, a lot of stick, a lot of, questionable comments, a lot of PR disasters with the McLaren team and obviously changing to Red Bull, a lot of question marks and naysayers, but an engine that's not really gone wrong at all so far for Red Bull this season, and their first win in 13 years. So congratulations to the Honda Racing camp. Finally getting a win on 4 wheels rather than 2 for once.
And for it to be on Austria, after we poked fun at them for years for having underpowered and unreliable engines, not just unreliable, matter how many turbo units, how many MGUK, MGUHs broke down, but also they were slow right out the box. And for them to come out and win in Austria, a power track among all others.
Yeah, a brilliant win, much deserved. I think that's something that very easily got lost in the shuffle of obviously the Verstappen Leclerc decision, but a brilliant win for Honda, and congratulations to them. VAR check for a penalty in the England game, by the way. Just keeping half an eye on that one in the background, a possible penalty, and I think it's a debatable one. I'll give it the rundown in just a second. Ref's having a look at the screen. Ref is going over to have a look at the monitors. I'll get back to that in a minute. But here's a quick rundown, and we'll stop along the way and pick out some of the key performances. Max Verstappen winning by 2.7 seconds in the end over Charles Leclerc. Surely that first win is coming. That was a brilliant driver. He did very, very little wrong. Also, by the way, on the VAR check, it looks like the England player's taking a dive as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
But
Alan White took a dive. Jeez.
That looks like a dive from where I'm sitting, but I could, well, let's see if the ref buys it. Although there is a smidgen of contact before she goes down, and I think it could be dodgy. More on that in a second. Again, refs having a good look at the review booth on that one. They're giving it the old cricket rock and roll treatment right now as we speak. It's a fun time. We're all bricking it because there's only 9 minutes to go in the game here as well. Valtteri Bottas very quietly rounded off the podium in third, 19 seconds off the win, which goes to show you just how far off the pace Mercedes were at on this one. A very quiet one. Then he had a very rampaging Sebastian Vettel right behind him. He actually put it on the grass coming off the final corner on the final lap in a desperate attempt to try and get up to Valtteri in time. Couldn't do it. Sebastian Vettel, just not his day at the office. Very unlucky, but still a solid fourth place. Referees finished looking at the review, by the way. Mm-hmm. Coming back onto the pitch. VAR decision. Penalty!
Oh, my God.
Okay. Oh, boy. This ain't over yet, folks. Before we start to go into nuclear meltdown, should we talk about the other team that really excelled? Because we talked about how Honda have excelled with Red Bull. But after splitting with McLaren this year have been really good, and they continue to be good.
Not only did Lando Norris have a very solid race where he finished in 6th, we also had very quietly off the back burner Carlos Sainz, who had to start the race from 19th on the grid after taking a power unit penalty. He had to start from effectively the back of the field in P19. He came all the way through into 8th place. A brilliant drive. It's a shame we didn't really see any of it on the hard camera over the course of the race, but a brilliant drive nonetheless from Carlos. All the Vamos chants going on in the Mercedes garage after that one. Another brilliant drive from Carlos, King?
Yeah, it's like, man, McLaren in general, like, they've really not only taken a step up from last year, but they've taken a step up from just the start of the
penalty saved. Oh,
thank God, Alyssa Meyer.
Sorry, had to do it. God damn it, England! Carry on, King. Don't mind me.
But yeah, they've taken a step up from not only last year, but from just the start of the season, where it's like McLaren are not clearly best of the rest, but they're definitely sticking their nose in, making sure that, we're McLaren, and, maybe there'll be one day this season where stuff will happen, stuff will break out, and we'll maybe snatch a podium away from somebody.
Indeed. Again, a brilliant drive from Carlos. Again, it's still going to be a matter of picking up what they can get, but it looks like McLaren have really found themselves again. And, they've still got a lot of work to do to get to the front three, of course, because let's be real here, we still kind of evaluate McLaren in the context of the big things rather than, P6 and P8. But, they look like the best of the rest right now, and that is a very, very promising sign for them going forward.
By far and away the best of the rest. Carlos Sainz is driving like the man that he was at Toro Rosso before he went to Renault last year. And I think his slump in 2018 was really more down to Renault as a team than Sainz as a driver. Because this is the Carlos Sainz we voted as driver of the year back in 2017.
Yeah.
And Lando Norris, runaway rookie of the year, in my opinion. Yes, he has a better car than any of the 4 rookies in the field, but he is maximizing that equipment to his best. 2 top 6s so far this year.
Indeed, he's driven very, very well indeed. So far so good for Lando on that one. Lando P6 in the end on that one. Again, ahead of Pierre Gasly, who Pierre Gasly in the middle of a McLaren sandwich. He was lapped during the race by his teammates.
I'm going to say this. It is astonishing, and I cannot get my head around how a man who won the Renault Euro Cup Championship, second in Formula 3.5 to Sainz, GP2 champion, Super Formula Vice champion, took Toro Rosso to fourth on merit in Bahrain and sixth in Hungary. And now all of a sudden you bring him into Red Bull and he drives like a lesser version of himself. I don't know if it's something.
Use red card for England in the game against the USA. England are down to 10 men, or 10 women, I should say, in this case. Sorry about that. Yeah, Millie Bright's been sent off. So, it's 10 v 11 in the England-USA game.
Commiserations, Trey. Commiserations, Trey.
The collapse begins.
I don't know what it is. I know Pierre Gasly is underperforming, but something else seems off. Something must not be right with the car, and they've already had to replace his chassis. And the problem is as well, I know Pierre was struggling to start the season to adapt to the new car that he's driving, but it's been 9 races and he still hasn't adapted. And if you're Red Bull, you're just like, if you're really committed on dumping Pierre Gasly after one season, what do you do to replace him? Because Helmut Marko's not going to bring Daniel Kvyat as much as he should. Alexander Albon is probably 1 year away from prime time. Patricio Ward is certainly not ready. We'll get to him in a bit. So what do? Do you go out and get a free agent like Nico Hülkenberg?
Ooh.
I don't know what you do because also, by the way, hi, I've got some lights on in here again now so you can actually see my face. That's useful. But look, I don't know what to make of the Gasly situation. It's like England's women's football team. It's the hope that kills you. And it's not pretty, to say the least. And being lapped by a team. I think Christian Horner said after the race, we need to press Control Alt Delete on Gasly, which is not a good sign. I do hope he gets given time to adapt. I am. It's not a good situation because I'd feel a bit better about it if it wasn't for how Red Bull treat their drivers, in the past. It's made me a bit more skeptical about what could happen with Gasly going forward. That's what concerns me more than anything else. So I hope he's given time. I don't see what the hell you do if you do cut him early. Again, like Alex Albon isn't ready for prime time, in my opinion. Kvyat would be a huge ego dent to Helmut Marko, who was determined to shove him out the door twice already. And now you're promoting him back to the Red Bull seat again.
And remember, they gave up Carlos Sainz. They gave up Carlos Sainz because he would have been the perfect fit for that drive, if not for the fact that Max Verstappen and him didn't get along.
Precisely. So yeah, it's a bit worrying on that one, but hopefully Gasly gets time to adapt more than anything else. Because they gave up the house for this Verstappen Gasly team, and it's not working out how anyone would have liked. Well, maybe for one driver anyway. As mentioned, Carlos Sainz in 8th, Kimi Räikkönen in 9th, and Antonio Giovinazzi, his first F1 point in 10th place. Congrats to him. You may have seen the video do the rounds on social media where he promised his boss, Frederic Vasseur, if he got a point in F1, someone would have to cut off the back of his mullet.
Oh, no, but that's the best part.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go on the F1 Instagram page or on Sauber's Twitter account if you haven't seen it. Like Frederick literally runs around the back of the camp with a pair of scissors and has to chop off the back. It's actually quite
I'm just glad Colin Calls is not his team boss instead of Frederick Vasseur, because he'd be getting the teeth pulled.
Oh, yeah. First points.
Yes. First points for an Italian driver since Tony Liuzzi in 2010.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, almost a decade.
Yeah,
wow,
that tells you how deep the Italian talent drought to Formula One has been. Since Trulli and Liuzzi stepped away at the end of 11.
Yeah, more news coming from the USA game. 7 minutes added time. I repeat, 7 minutes added time for the VAR check. 7 minutes other than that one. They've just got into injury time now on that one. Phil Neville's basically throwing the house. It's like he's about to explode on the sideline. So he's throwing the house at this one. If anyone wants to call for a miracle, now will be a good time. Bottom half of the scores a bit. Sergio Perez in 11th, Danny Ricciardo in 12th, seeming like a bit of a waste of talent at the moment, and then with him and Hulkenberg in 13th. Lance Stroll 14th. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Daniel Ricciardo. Turned 30 yesterday. Congrats to him. God, he's 30 already. I feel old just saying that. Ricciardo ahead of Hulkenberg. Lance Stroll 14th. Albon 15th. Grosjean 16th, who went an entire race without a whiny radio message. Congrats to him. Kvyat 17th. George Russell, who was actually seen on hard camera battling a Haas at one point. Progress. George Russell in 18th. Kevin Magnussen 19th. Robert Kubica 20th. 3 laps down, but accidentally driver of the day for about 48 hours. Yeah, he won the driver of the day vote, but F1 didn't publish it. Apparently, it was some sort of publishing error behind the scenes, and it was revealed that Max Verstappen was actually driver of the day with a 74% majority of the vote.
As it should. And also, note on Kevin Magnussen, he had an early drive-through penalty for being out of position on his grid start, and his race, it didn't get better than the 5th place qualifying effort that he had. Haas are garbage at racecraft, and things are only getting worse for them from there. More on that in the news section.
Indeed. Championship standings real quick. Hamilton of 197 points. Valtteri on 166. He's 31 behind now as we get closer and closer to the summer break. Verstappen is now back up to 3rd on 126 points. He's 3 ahead of Sebastian Vettel in 4th on 123. Charles Leclerc up to 105 in 5th. Then it's a long way back to Pierre Gasly in Formula 1.25 on 43. Carlos Sainz now takes an 8-point lead in the Formula 1.5 standings over his teammate Lando Norris, 30-22. He's up ahead of Kimi Räikkönen on 21 points and Daniel Ricciardo on 16 to round off the top 10. Constructors' Championship, Mercedes now has a 135-point lead, 363 to Ferrari's 228. Red Bull in 3rd on 169. Then in the best of the rest hunt, McLaren now has a 20-point lead on Renault, who failed to score a point this weekend, whereas McLaren takes home another solid haul of 12 points themselves. Alfa Romeo back up into 6th place now. They've cleared away from the tie they had with Racing Points. They're on 22 points. Solid job. Points. Toro Rosso on 16 points, still 9th for the standings right now. Still, they have not scored a point since Monaco. That's now 3 straight weekends where a Haas has failed to score a point. Trifle concerning. And of course, Williams at the back, still on 0. F1 is back with the British Grand Prix. You know, that favourite round you got to take out a mortgage to be able to afford tickets to, unless you're an F1 YouTuber, basically. So have fun with that one. That's in 2 weeks' time on July 14th. So, yeah, that'll be fun for all concerned. Hopefully, maybe. Who's here excited for Hamilton land? Anyone?
I don't know what to expect out of this race, to be honest. It could be really great. It could be really terrible. It'll be densely populated, and people have paid way too much for their tickets. I'm optimistic. I want to be optimistic about this race. The last one was so good. This one can't be terrible, right?
I hope so.
Man.
Right. One could only hope. Freeze me. You know, I got a feeling Hamilton's just going to piss off into the distance, but hopefully I'm wrong on that front. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And we also get Channel 4 live. Hooray! Also loving the chat
race.
No, also loving the chat from Cam. Merck's gonna beat that ass, which kind of says it all. And also Devin Butler for Red Bull in the chat from Joe Ennis. Well played.
F1 2019 available on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox 360. This is not an advertisement.
Well, because I just came in today.
Excuse me, I said at spots 360. What the fuck? At me. At spots 1. God. King, did we lose Dre?
I think so. It seems like Dre's internet dropped.
He's still recording, right?
Yeah.
Just in time to catch the end of the soccer match. So, yeah, King, you want to be, are you first in line to get that Julius Randle jersey?
No. No. The Knicks are dead to me.
Just like they are to most of the city, New York.
Up. Someone's come back in the call.
Yep, hang on. The internet had a bit of a fault on my end there for a second there. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, it was on the fence for a long time, then it decided to just fall over.
Yeah, full time in the UK USA game. The United States are on to the Women's World Cup final.
It's like, I believe that we have won.
Congratulations, fellas.
Rapinoe.
Yeah, we didn't even have to sub in Rapinoe. I hope she's okay. Apparently, she has a hamstring injury.
Oh, I like Megan as well. Yeah, well,
I know.
Congratulations, America.
My president.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Congratulations to the United States. They, like, as much as they are the enemies and whatnot, and you know, they are a incredible women's team, and I hope none of them go to the fucking White House, like Megan quoted earlier this week. They are a very likable set of gals, and I wish them the very best in the final, purely because of my American colleagues.
Yep. And they're going to Congress to meet AOC.
Hey, we like AOC. She's cool. Also, shout out to those guys that mentioned it as well. This rocked up in the post today. Maybe expect videos on this soon. I don't know. I'll see how I feel, because apparently the YouTube scene at the moment with the F1 2019 is not promising. Apparently it's crushed the smaller guys, and yeah, we'll wait and see on that one. But well done, England, on making the semi-finals. That was a hell of an effort. There's no disgrace in losing to the Americans whatsoever. I'm now going to be very upset.
Going to make Piers Morgan miserable, so that's always a great thing.
That's very much true. You know, so that's fun. Some things in football never change, as Kenny Bone puts in the chat. But should we get into Formula 2 real quick and get Formula 3 out of the way before we get into the MotoGP section?
Oh my God. So I want to first talk about the finish to Formula 3 race number 2 on Sunday, King, because it came down to Prima drivers Robert Schwartzman, backed by S&P Racing, and Marcus Armstrong in a final lap showdown for the win. Schwartzman, again, this is coming off a BFC restart. So Schwartzman has the advantage over Armstrong. Armstrong tries a lunge up the inside of turn 3 or 2, depending on what your definition of a turn is. The two of them make contact. Schwartzman gets a puncture. Armstrong gets his wing knocked out of place. And behind them, Jake Hughes, who said he was waiting for the two cars up in front of them to make contact. Well, they did. Armstrong took the win on the track, but was assessed a 5-second time penalty for avoidable contact, thus granting the win to Jake Hughes.
I mean, I think this one was a fair bit more clean cut. I mean, Schwartzman literally chop blocked him going into the braking zone. You can't do that. Like, that's so dangerous. He clearly thought he was far enough ahead going into the corner, but he clearly wasn't. And then smashes the front wing off off Armstrong's car, and then Armstrong has to beach it in the gravel due to a puncture he suffered as a result of the contact. But yeah, I couldn't. That was a, shall we say, much more clear-cut race-winning decision.
I have the link. The Formula One channel actually posted the last lap of the race on their YouTube channel.
But it also gets it got dicey in the interviews afterwards, because Schwartzman said, in my opinion, it was a racing incident. We were fighting for the win, and it happened so quick. I feel sorry for Marcus for the DNF and for my penalty, but I think the penalty is deserved because he didn't finish. But I don't feel myself that I did something completely wrong.
And didn't Schwartzman inherit like a win off of similar situations back at Catalunya?
Yep. And then Armstrong clapped back, saying that he was glad that Schwartzman got the penalty.
Oh,
and they're teammates.
Oh boy, this is not gonna end well, is it?
Good hard racing coming up at Silverstone.
Yes,
good
indeed.
Hard racing.
Yeah, just running through the race one, we had Yuri Vips taking his first win of the season, Red Bull junior driver, ahead of Max Futrell of Red Bull and Marcus Armstrong in third. Rest of the race 2 podium was Jan Daravala in second, and Robert Schwartzman demoted down to third. But Schwartzman still has an 8-point lead over Daravala in second. Vips is third at 63, Armstrong fourth, Futrell fifth, Pedro Piquet, Jake Hughes, Christian Lundgaard, Nico Carey, and David Beckman rounding out your top 10.
Though, funny enough about Beckman, we talk about the ART double disqualification in qualifying over a rogue physio.
A rogue
physio? How?
What?
I've not heard about this.
So, in Formula 3, they're limited to 11-person crews that are allowed to work on the cars. And ART had physios holding coolers for the intake for Christian Lundgaard and David Beckman. And they weren't declared a part of the 11-person crew. So both Lundgaard and Beckman were disqualified from qualifying.
Oh, wow. No, that is an ugly one. Oh, dear. The rogue physio heard around the world.
And consider, that was the second wildest thing to happen in Formula 3 this weekend. It might have upstaged anything that happened in Formula 2, which is hardly ever upstaged for excitement.
God. And we got a lot of new changes in the Formula 2 grid heading into this race.
Yes.
Pato O'Ward rocked up.
Patricio O'Ward rocked up. In a sequence of events, he was brought in to replace Mahavir Rangunathan. Thank the Lord. But we also had Ralph Boschung drop from Trident. And I believe he was replaced by fellow American Ryan Vetter. And we also had Dorian Boccolacci drop from Campos, which brought in Arjun Mania's back.
Yay!
Yeah,
now, none of them fared well. None of them finished in the points. In fact, Mania was disqualified for the feature race. But we did have some winners who've been waiting a long time to get back to the top step of the podium. In the case of feature race winner Nobuharu Matsushita, his first win since 2017, and his
Prince Nobby.
Yes, the $750 man is back.
Oh.
His first
a
year too late.
Episode 100.
A year too late, but not overdue. Thanks, Prince Nobby. You know what? This is what I thought of that pick in the Centennial Cup. Yes, it's a bag of trash.
Great.
Carry on, RJ.
Absolutely loved it. Overhaul Luca Giotto at the end of the race to take the win. Giotto second, and Nick DeVries with another podium to bolster his championship challenge in third. And in the sprint race, it was Sergio Sette Camara who came from fourth on the grid to win his first sprint race ahead of Giotto and ahead of DeVries on the podium again. And of course, one of the big highlights of that sprint race was Mick Schumacher had a terrible feature race. He stalled on the grid and was relegated to almost a lap down in 18th. But from 18th on the sprint race grid, he charged to fourth and almost took that final podium off of Nick DeVries. That's the Mick Schumacher we were hoping to see this season. I hope
Indeed
that starts to turn around.
Yeah, I hope Mick could just happen to just be better in the second half in every series he drives in.
Yeah, there are 6 more rounds left, and at the halfway point, here is how the Formula 2 Drivers' Championship stands. Nick de Vries has amassed a massive 152 points. He is 37 ahead of Nicholas Latifi, who's now slumped to second and hasn't been on the podium since Catalunya. Sergio Sette Camara jumps up to third on 107. Luca Giotto jumps up to fourth on 97. Jack Aitken down to fifth on 86. Juan Yuzhao in sixth on 85. Antoine Hubert on 77. Nobuharu Matsushita on 61. Luis Delatraz, who had a scary incident in the sprint race, lost the brakes and crashed in, but he's still ninth on 42 points. Jordan King still hanging in there in 40 points and 10th.
Hey. Again, Formula 2, Formula 3, fun times for all involved. If you haven't seen that Formula 3 last lap, go out of your way to see it. Fun times for all involved.
So good.
Yeah, so good. That was a stunner. And yeah, awesome stuff as always. Right. After this quick musical break, insert here, we'll come back to you to have a quick talk of MotoGP and the Dutch Grand Prix at Assen. This is the part where I put up the results screen just to make absolutely sure of myself in the middle of the musical break. See? Behind the scenes content.
Hey, you got the city right. That's the most important part.
Makes a change, innit? Oh, dear. Right. Assen, MotoGP. Right. So, this was the race we were all super hyped up for in MotoGP this time around. Like, Assen last year, in case you haven't seen it, was a barnstormer, an absolute classic of a race. We had 7 guys fighting for the win. Valentino Rossi giving Jorge Lorenzo a French kiss at 150 miles an hour. About 60 different lead changes in the run-up to the race itself, and Marc Marquez taking an epic victory. This year, not quite on the same level, unfortunately, but still a fun time. We had Fabio Quartararo on pole position once again. He's the youngest man now to ever have back-to-back pole positions. He out-qualified Maverick Vinales to pole position by a 10th of a second in the end. It was a very spread-out qualifier. Normally, it's a lot closer than this. A second covered the top 5. Rins was third, Marquez fourth, and Joan Mir, yes, the other Suzuki, in fifth. But he was a second off pole. It was a very weird session. I mean, it was the way it was going all weekend long. Like, the 2 clear fastest guys by a mile was Maverick Vinales and Fabio Quartararo on the Yamahas. And yeah, that's pretty much how the race played out too. It was a lot more spread out this time around. We had a big fun fight in the leading group for a little while. At one point, we actually had both Suzukis leading. Rins ahead of me, and I was like, oh God, could we get a Suzuki one too? That could be fun. And then Alex Rins bins it from the lead. Oh. Apparently it was the wind. The wind forced his front wheel up in a braking area towards turn 9. It unsettled the bike, and when he knew he wasn't going to make the corner, tried to save it by trail braking, and then just the front completely went in completely, and down he went. Rins from the lead of the race binned it, and everyone was just like, oh. It's also the other really, big highlight of the race was a huge accident between Valentino Rossi and Taka Nakagami. I think fighting out, I think it was for 12th place at the time. Taka was collected apparently by Rossi, who was struggling, trying to, override the bike to get back up the field. And he tucked the front, lost it, collected Nakagami. And this was at the back of the track, a huge braking zone. I think it was a 140 mile an hour braking zone. It was very scary to watch in real time. Thankfully, both riders okay. Because Taco looked real bad. Like Taco was down and they were getting the stretcher out for him as we were watching the race live. But thankfully, no harm done, only bruises. Thankfully, and maybe a small amount of damage to the Pride. I'm just checking the chat as well because the reference in the race winner tweet was literally for your benefit. I didn't see this. Well, hang on. What's the tweet in question? I may have missed it.
The headline says "Return of the Mac."
What
a way to jump into our winner, Maverick Vinales, back on top.
First of all, that's brilliant. Well played, Lewis. Love you, man. That's awesome. We named an episode after this the last time he won a Grand Prix, which is a fun fact about that I'll get to in a minute. But yes, in the leading group, Maverick Vinales took the lead and eventually took off with about 8 laps to go. Marquez tried to chase him down in second. Mark could see what was happening. He didn't want to override it. He thought, let's take the second. I don't believe him for a second, given that Honda had a special 60th anniversary winner's flag, just in case. I think Marquez was more forced into second rather than him playing the championship game. But still, 20 very well-earned points, especially given 1, Rins binned it, and 2, Dovi was off the podium. So, hey, more points gained for the title race. But yeah, as said, Maverick Vinales dominated the second half of the race to take a pretty comfortable victory in the end by 4.8 seconds. Fun fact, the last time, and again, I can't remember who it was on Twitter that mentioned this, but I will hopefully find it and put it in the notes down below. But the last time Maverick Vinales won a MotoGP race was Phillip Island last season. That was on October 28th, 2018. I mentioned that date in particular because on that same day, some guy called Max Verstappen won his last Grand Prix, the Mexican Grand Prix last year, also on October 28th. And their initials are both MV. Gotta love it.
Conspiracy.
Cue the tinfoil hats. Both going the exact same distance between their last race victories. So, yeah, that's a fun little conspiracy for you. Fabio Quartararo finished third in the end. He was a distant 9 seconds off the win. He was leading the race at one point, and we thought, hey, maybe this will be the first win for Fabio. Not quite. He made a bit of a Horlicks of it. He admitted it himself after the race. He may have seen it during the race itself. His bike was having a lot of wobble going into some of the harder braking zones. Turns out that was his own making. Hodson on commentary was implying on BT Sport that there might have been a bike error, like something wasn't locking right. He admitted he was just taking the wrong lines. He was taking the wrong lines in the heavy braking zones, and that's what was unsettling the bike. He very nearly crashed a couple of times over.
And he's still finishing third out of all that. That's kid special.
Yeah, he basically readjusted after figuring out that by following Maverick and Mark, he was taking a different line and he ended up solving the problem himself, basically, because he was taking a much more narrow line into the heavier braking zones because he was trying to stop Marquez from going around the outside of him, which didn't work. But props for trying. I mean, this kid is still learning, and he's learning literally as the race goes on. It's like watching the Dragon Ball Z Broly movie all over again. Like, the guy's just learning as he fights. It's ridiculous. He's like a learning computer. The win is coming. Make no mistake. As mentioned, Marquez wasn't going to throw the house at it when his main title threat, Andrea Dovizioso, finished in fourth. 14 seconds off the win. Not such a good day for him. I know some of the Italian press was a lot more scathing regarding this, apparently saying that, and I quote, Dovi needs to take more risks, and Betrix needs to stop treating Dovi like a long lost brother. Yikes! The claws are already coming out here in the Ducati camp because I think they feel like this title's already slipping away again. Hey, because it's not like Germany's next or anything. Whoops. SpaghettiOs. Frankie Morbidelli matched his career-high finish on the second Petronas Yamaha in fifth, ahead of Danilo Petrucci in sixth, Crutchlow seventh. Mir fell to eighth in the late stages, just ahead of Jack Miller in ninth. Andrea Iannone in the top 10 for Aprilia. Nice result for him.
Jesus, I didn't even notice that. Well done, Andrea.
Yes, the plastic surgery's finally come good. Yeah, it will be really great for his future modeling career. Then the Super Espargaro brothers, pole ahead of Alish again, 11th for pole, 12th for Relish. Miguel Oliveira, the dentist, in 13th. Good points for him on the KTM Tech 3. Pecco Bagnaia in 14th place. What's happened to him? And Hafiz Siren was the last of the point scorers in 15th place on the second KTM Tech 3. Tito Rabat and Karen Abraham both suffered, I think, crashes during the course of the race. Actually, no, Rabat didn't, but Abraham did, sorry. Zarco again, didn't make it 10 laps on the flag. Mechanical problem, I believe. And Nakagami and Rossi hit each other, and Alex Rins was the only other DNF on the second lap of the Grand Prix. Sad face indeed. Again, we had a rookie 1-2 at one point. Again, shout out to Lewis in the comments saying Petrucci also got done by Morbidelli at the chicane on the last lap because he was trying not to attack Dovi. Oops. Yes. I also agree with him when he says throw all the money at Fabio. Yes, completely agreed on that one. And also saying Ian only literally spent every practice session trying to tow off Marquez. Oh, and shout out to Andrew in the chat, as mentioned, apparently Zarco had an arm pump problem. Had to pull over and stop. Not good. Another arm pump situation. Yikes. So, yeah, Marquez now has a 44-point lead in the championship over Andrea Dovizioso.
West!
Guys, this is not looking good for any other title contender, given, as we mentioned, signature round coming up in Germany very, very soon.
What is this, his fourth home Grand Prix coming up?
Something like that. Andrea Dovizioso second on 116 points. Petrucci third on 108. Rins on 101. Rossi on fifth on 72. Fabio shooting up the board quite rapidly here, now sixth on 67. Maverick on 65. Jack Miller on 60. Pol Espargaro ninth. Still ninth in the championship on 52 points. Somehow ahead of Cal Crutchlow, who's on 51 in 10th, 3 points ahead of his teammate. As mentioned, the other big piece of news that came through in the Grand Prix was that Jorge Lorenzo had a massive crash into the gravel trap in Sector 2 on Friday in FP1, fractured his vertebra as a result of the incident. He will be in a one of those support frames for apparently at least a month, which means that's going to put him out through the summer break. He's aiming to come back at Brno, but another big injury for one of the toughest riders I think we've ever seen in GP. Because if you know the story of Lorenzo over the years, he's taken some almighty dings in his career.
He won 6 years ago at Assen. I can remember he fell off the bike. I believe he broke his collarbone, flew out to get emergency surgery, then came back and finished the race on Saturday, I believe.
Yes. He came back on Saturday for the race itself after basically breaking a collarbone and then getting it operated on the same day by flying by private jet to Barcelona and back and forth. Basically, he came back and finished the Grand Prix in fifth.
And it was the subject of one of my favorite motorsports photos of all time, because this was at the time they were promoting some Superman movie, and they had a picture of Lorenzo riding in front of that billboard. And it's just like, yes, this is very telling. Lorenzo in that time was Superman.
He really was. It was a phenomenal performance. One of the all-time most ridiculous GP performances we've ever seen, quite frankly. And yeah, Lorenzo was taking some dings over the years. I still remember the massive high slide he had at Laguna Seca back, I think, in 2007, where he was absolutely flung off the damn thing. Going into turn 5, I think at like 150 miles an hour, he was like, you could see in the shots, he's literally like horizontal to vertical as he's flung off on the high side. And again, I think he broke both his ankles in that crash. He's had some bad ones in his career. I sincerely hope he's physically okay, because again, he's taken a lot of punishment over the years, and you know, I do worry about his health at some point. You know, it's not ideal to say the least. So you know, I don't want him to be another Pedrosa in that sense, but hey, who knows? We'll have to wait and see how that one goes. Again, get well soon, Jorge Lorenzo, and I hope to see you back on a bike in good hands real soon. Quick rundown to the Moto2 and Moto3 race. The Moto2 race was the best race of the weekend, which is a weird thing to say about Moto2 most of the time. Chaos reigned on this one. A very, very big leading group, a lot of accidents, a lot of scraps all over the place. The big one was Lorenzo Baldassarri basically continuing his reputation of checkers or wreckers by having a drop in the leading group at turn 1 and collecting Alex Marquez from underneath him. With just 2 laps to go till the end. So yeah, Marquez, who was gunning for a 4th win in a row, was taken out by arguably his number 1 title rival in Lorenzo Baldassarri right from the end. So David Vierge had a big crash. Bastianini went down. Martin collected Sam Lowe's by accident and then crashed himself. Navarro went down. Remy Gardner binned it from pole, which was another real disappointment. First Aussie on pole, I think, since the days of, I want to say McDoohan, actually, back in the days. I guess you want to count, because Jack Miller never raced in Moto2, funnily enough.
I love the suggestion that Lewis Sotheby should stop betting because he had Marquez to win this race.
Oh, no. Like, this is the chat here. Baldassarri cost me €160 because I had Arbolino, Marquez, and Maverick as the 3 class winners. Oh, no.
First since Stoner, by the way.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah. Moto2 was batshit crazy. When the dust settled at the end, Augusto Fernandez takes his first ever Grand Prix victory. So nice to see him. To be fair, he's been working real hard on that Pons bike since he came in as a mid-season replacement last year for Hector Barbera. A great drive from the number 40 himself to get his first ever class win. And Brad Binder, who was sliding all over the place on that KTM. Get this man on a MotoGP bike. A brilliant second place from Binder on a KTM that had no business up there.
Seeking a promise from a team in blue and orange, just like you would hope for.
Yay! They totally didn't. They totally didn't shit the bed. So that that's a fun one, right? Right? The Lord Binder has returned. Good to see. And Luca Marini, who we barely saw on camera the entire race, finished in 3rd for the Sky VR46 team. Ahead of Thomas Luthi for Dynavolt. Tetsuya Nagashima, with his best result so far in his career, in 5th place. Locatelli in 6th. Stefano Manzi, who didn't somehow crash during the race, finished in 7th. Amazing. MV Augusta. Both of them in the top 10 because Domi Agata was in 9th as well. So congrats to MV on a double top 10 finish. Very nice indeed. Marcel Schrotter splitting them in 8th. Marco Bezzecchi rounds off the top 10. Remember him from last year's Moto3 title? Yeah, the rookies are coming alive. Fabio Di Gianantonio in 11th. Jake Dixon for Great Britain in 12th. Yay! BSB's finest from last year gets his first career GP points. Great to hear from him in 12th place. He's worked very hard on that Angel Nieto bike, come back from a concussion, and has done great. So a great result for Jake Dixon in 12th. Lucas Tolovic in 13th. Joe Roberts in 14th. And I could have quoted rounding off the points in 15th place. Quick rundown of the championship over there. Thomas Luthi, the gatekeeper, back on top, 117 points. 6 ahead of Alex Marquez. Augusto Fernandez now 3rd on 92, ahead of Jorge Navarro on 89. Baldassarri on 88. Marini 84. Schrotter 81. Lord Binder in 8th on 64. Bastianini 9th on 56. And Remy Gardner in 10th on 41. Moto3, real quick. Again, not quite the barnstorm you'd come to expect. The fight was really the fun fight for 3rd more than anything else. We actually had a last lap dogfight at the end, a one-on-one dogfight between Tony Arbolino and Lorenzo Dalla Porta, who's probably been the 2 strongest guys in the class so far this season. And it was Arbolino that came out on top by just 0.04 of a second.
The streak is over.
The streak is over. It's like, also, I didn't mention this from Lewis in the chat as well. I mentioned it. Manzi put Pratama in hospital on Friday and had to start a loss, and he still finished in 7th. Crazy. But yes, Moto3. Again, Arbolino beating Dalla Porta over the line. Jumpman Cornfile rounds off the podium in 3rd. I was like, I now refuse to call him Jakob. I will only call him Jumpman Cornfile after last year now. That is official. Gabby Rodrigo 4th, John McPhee 5th, Iagora in 6th, ahead of Ramirez, Antonelli, Foggia, Lopez in the top 10, Fedati, Canet, Masaki, Salak, and Garcia rounding off the points there. Championship standings on that one. Canet has a 7-point lead over Dalla Porta. Antonelli third on 83 points. Arbolino fourth on 76. And Vietti runs on the top 5 on 68. Definitely check out the Moto2 race. That's a fun one as well. Again, Moto3 was kind of fun. As mentioned from Lewis, Jakob Kornfall, Jumpman himself, probably could have won if he didn't have to take a long lap penalty in the middle of the race, which didn't help either.
Oh, man. And two things I loved out of this race. One, Honda Team Asia's throwback livery in Moto3.
Oh, yes.
Celebrating anniversary. And they had, of all people, Kunimitsu Takahashi over there taking a break from his Super GT duties to go ride one of his old bikes in a demonstration. That was really awesome to see. And I don't know if we talked about this yet. Notice Folger's back in Moto 2.
He did. Folger is back. Great to see as well that Folger was filling in again due to injury and whatnot. But great to see him after that awful mystery illness that he had a couple of years ago, which had to basically have him step away from bike racing for an extended hiatus. But great to see Jonas Folger back in there and finishing the race in 17th place, just a couple of places shy of the points in Moto 2. But great to see Jonas Folger back, and I hope he continues to make steady progress and we can see him back on the grid full time again real soon. Quick news to cover before we get into the list, boys. I think we've got some stuff to talk about regarding Rich Energy as well, because oh boy.
Well, I believe, should we go to our resident Rich Energy correspondent, Ryan Eric King, on this one?
I think we should.
Yeah, remember, we're leading this off with Rich Energy instead of Red Bull, thus proving that they are hashtag better than Red Bull at getting sued in court.
Yes, Rich Energy have lost their case against White Bikes, and but I think most interestingly enough, Rich Energy have to disclose to White Bikes. Don't know if White Bikes will make it public, but Rich Energy have to disclose how many cans and how much money they made from the branded cans that featured the now not allowed logo, which is all the Rich Energy they've ever sold. And
right.
After July 18th, that logo cannot be seen on any cans of Rich Energy.
Yep. And they also have to disclose their the details of their sponsorship deal with Haas.
Oh boy.
Oh, golly.
That could be a massive can of worms. If it depends on how douchey White Bikes want to be, which, to be fair, if they did release the details, I wouldn't blame them given how much slander and how much their name's been dragged through the mud by a Rich Energy campaign that ended up being total bullshit, basically, in the end. So White Bikes, do us all a favor on the internet. Release the footage. Release all the details.
Drop that William Story P tape. Do it now.
I will buy one of your bicycles. Release that footage. I want to see it. I
have just released a horrible thought and idea into the universe, and I do not apologize.
Oh, dear.
White Bikes, release the William Story P tape.
Well, would it be on like one of those really awful bad camera phones from like 2005, like their Twitter account has done over the last few months? Like, I wonder. Oh dear. So yeah, Rich Energy now could be Big Broke Energy very, very soon. Still has a great beard though, but hey, you know, I guess being a con man and all that, he's got to hide his ridiculous face. No surprises there. So yeah, shout out to that one. RJ, I think you want to do a quick rundown of IMSA and a Super GT before we get into the meaty stuff.
Oh goodness. Okay, so IMSA happened. We had the 6 hours of the Glen, which included, among other people in attendance, two very good friends of the show. One, Elizabeth Lapstock of Jalopnik, along with her
Yay
watching, as well as friend of the show, Sarah Connors, who again, their GoFundMe, we'll post a link to it at some point. They're still taking donations for what they can for gender affirming surgery, which is really awesome. And I'm glad
she's halfway there, you know, which is fantastic news.
Yes, it's fantastic. I love it. And guess what else we love? Mazda finally won.
Yes! Mazda!
Blowing up race after race after race. They finally did it. They took a 1-2 finish in the 6 hours of the Glen with Ticknell and Jarvis.
Awesome. Delighted to hear about. It's we've joked about it a lot, about Mazda seeming to be cursed in IMSA, but I'm glad they finally got that win and lifted the monkey off the backs. And now King will proceed to sing the Mazda song in the style of Matt from the old days of Mystery Science Theater F1 whenever Vettel had a win.
Oh, heck no.
Mazda, la 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 la. Funny face.
I thought the Mazda song was just going to be like the loud screeching of rotary engines.
That's right.
That could work too.
Super GT happened. Kazuya Oshima and Kenta Yamashita snapped a 5.5-year winless drought for Lexus Team Le Mans. You may know them as the team that Felix Rosenqvist raced for last season. So that was good to see them win at Chang International Circuit in Thailand. Go watch the race, but watch it on mute. All I'll say is this. I had my concerns when Motorsport TV got the exclusive rights to the series, and they have come through. I know that commentating motorsport is very hard. I know it's hard to commentate motorsport that isn't necessarily in the mainstream. But when you're tripping over Japanese names that have more than 2 syllables in them named constantly, and when you're constantly making the show about how this compares to Formula One, talking more about Formula One, how terrible it is, than actually talking about the race, when you forget the safety car rules after learning them in the first race and losing track of them, this is bad.
It's very bad.
That's my rant for today. I mean, if it wasn't due to a conflict of interest, I would be begging and screaming and scratching on the door. Get me in the commentary booth.
No, RJ, if you want to send a CV through while you're on the show and send your resume in, why not, right?
Right. Right. I mean, sure, I'd only have to throw away my existing arrangements today with Sports Car, but that's besides the point.
Right. Totally. Makes sense. Breathe.
We talk about Red Bull?
We're talking about Red Bull.
Yeah, let's talk about Red Bull, because some other stuff happened with Red Bull over this past weekend. Now, last weekend, you may have heard me mention that Dan Ticknam and Artem Markelov had a spirited battle for last place at the last Super Formula round at Schwarzland Sugo. 1 week later, Dan Ticknam has been dropped from Red Bull, and Patricio Ward has been substituted to take his place for the rest of the season at Red Bull Team Mugen in Super Formula, on top of what could be additional Formula 2 commitments later on this season.
Very nice. I mean, I don't even really want to talk about Dan Ticknam too much because he's not really worth the hassle, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about his digital counterpart, Devin Butler.
I love how in just 1 week of release, Devin Butler is everybody's least favorite single-seater prospect.
Least favorite and also most favorite, both at the same time. I love it.
Dude, but think about this, because remember about 6 to 8 months ago when we were figuring out what Toro Rosso were going to do with their drivers, and we all thought that Red Bull and Dr. Marco were going to move the earth, the mountains, the heaven, the stars above, the mantle inside the earth to try and get Dan Ticknam a super license when he didn't have enough points. And now 8 months later, they want nothing to do with the guy.
Dropped straight out of the academy. Gone.
Dropped him so quickly. And that's the thing, because you remember his incident in Formula 4 at Silverstone, the one that saw him banned from a year and put on probation for another. Red Bull were still willing to take him on after that. That's a second chance not a lot of drivers get.
Though, weird side note, I think, like, the person who benefited the most from that incident happening and them having to cut ties with Dan Ticknam was probably Rosanna Tennant.
Really? What would that be?
Yeah. Remember Pole Position P1? We're going to do like a weekend race vlog with Dan Ticknam that exact weekend.
Oh.
Hey, shout out to Rosanna because she ended up seeing a lot of my talent and ended up getting me a couple of spots on their live show. So hi, Rosanna. Thanks.
Yeah,
you're the best.
So
But yeah, Jesus, that's
Dan has. It frustrates me. I don't take any pleasure of kicking young people who are learning their craft while they're down. That's why the Santino thing upset me so much, because I don't like to kick young people down. But when they're acting like that, you don't have no choice. And with Tictum, it's a case of when he is on his game, he is as good as Lando Norris. He's as good as George Russell. But the reality of the situation is he has had one too many blowups over the course of his run with Red Bull Racing. If it's not a problem with the car, it's a problem with everybody else cheating. And when you insult Honda in Japan without 2 world championships to back you up, you get dropped.
Yeah. Look, you've disrespected the brand you're representing too many times. You've ran your mouth too many times. You've not had the results to back up your verbal diarrhea that you've come out with for the last year. You'd already think that for a guy that really a lot of teams would immediately blackball for what he did in the first place over in Britain, you think you'd be on your best behavior, but instead you're being Mr. I'm mad online, basically making all these unnecessary comments about the sport, the brand, your fellow competitor in general, and then you're low key liking comments that are more favorable towards you on Instagram just because Red Bull have a knack of treating their drivers like shit. Now, don't get me wrong, there is absolutely some validity to that claim, but I have no empathy for Tictum whatsoever. It's a shame because I'm not disputing he is a talented kid. There is no doubt about that. But you've pissed off too many people. You've burnt too many bridges, mate.
Days before he was fired, this is the exact quote from his last race weekend in Super Formula, where he said, quote, "These cars are very sensitive. You could see that most of the teams are inconsistent, but that doesn't explain why I'm a second off my teammate. Not wanting to be arrogant, but on an off day, I might be a 10th or so off. But this is more than that."
He's basically implying that the series is out to get him. I just find
that... No, he's implying that it's his team's fault why he's slow.
Yeah, and it's just so blatantly disrespectful. You can't say that in public. Like, Robert Kubica got away with that one the other day before going into Austria, and I'm surprised he got away with it because he's so popular. But he basically implied the same thing, that, me and George ain't got the same car. Well, no, he's just better than you, Robert. I'm sorry. But... no, it's a shame. Like RJ, I take no pleasure in Tictum losing his job because we are still talking about a 20-year-old that, and it sucks because this is a sport where I think we forget a lot of younger people have to give up potential opportunities in life elsewhere. They may have to, curtail their education. This is certainly a very common thing you see in bike racing that no one talks about because you can start over there so young. There's many a story I know about people that can race a bike, but they can barely read and write, for example. So it sucks to see young people thrown away like that sometimes because of the nature of the industry. But Tictum's burned too many bridges for me, and it's and you know what, you've got to know how to act. Right. You can have all these thoughts in your head, all right, and when you're a highly strung professional racing driver on that level and things aren't going your way, I can totally understand the frustration. But you can't say those things in public. You are going to get eviscerated for them, and Tictum should know better, quite frankly. And if this is what it's going to take for him to learn, then so be it. I hope it's not the end for him, but, it's a shame. It's a damn shame. That's how I look at it anyway.
The other side of the coin is great opportunity for Patricio Ward. He did struggle in his first race. He said that the Formula 2 race in Austria for him was an ass-kicking. Didn't finish any races in the points, but he realized this is an opportunity. What a great opportunity for a guy who, again, in the 6-8 months ago, where we had said that Red Bull was going to move the Hurth and the Evans to get Dan Tictum into F1 by hook or by crook. Would you imagine that Patricio Ward would be in this spot as a fully backed Red Bull Junior driving in Formula 2 and Super Formula? You wouldn't have imagined this 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations, Pano. You're now the new Red Bull reserve guy in case Gasly gets dropped.
Hey, that's better than not having a seat at all.
Very true.
Knock-on effects. Sage Karam is going to take the seat that was meant for Patricio O'Ward in Toronto this weekend.
Yay! Sage! The homeboy is back! Yes!
Sage!
The homeboy is back. Another deep M101 reference there for you. But the homeboy is back in Toronto this weekend. That should be awesome. Right. I think that's most of the major news covered and whatnot. Gentlemen, I think it's time for the main event of the evening. It is the Motorsport 101 Redux Top 10 all-time drivers list. The moment you've all been waiting for. We have 30 of you guys still sitting around watching this right now live. So thank you all so much for sticking that out. I said we wouldn't go too late. We were wrong.
I don't mind it. It's a special occasion.
Precisely. I couldn't give a shit, quite frankly. So, King, the floor is yours. Now, before obviously you get into this, just to clarify one more time, we all sent individual lists to King in private with our top 10 lists. I've got my top 10 list on my phone right now. I will post it on Twitter after the show goes off the air, if we're not already dead, quite frankly. Apparently it's contentious. I'm sure RJ will back me up on this. We have no idea what this list is. King is the only man who knows what the consensus top 10 is, and apparently it's spicy. So you're going to get our reactions to this live as King tells us. So
this is where we put up the clickbait thumbnail and the title here.
I was just gasping. Just like, you would never believe what our top 10 all-time Grand Prix drivers are.
Strong react.
Strong.
It's going to be on every reaction channel on YouTube by tomorrow evening. Right. So with that being said, King, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. So I was thinking we'd have honorable mentions, but I forgot how the math would work out. So we just end up, we're going to start with 10, but there isn't a consensus number 10 because each of us have 3 different drivers at number 10. So there's a 3-way tie for the 10th spot.
So really, technically, it's a top 12. Great. Okay. So I know who my number 10 pick was, but okay.
Yeah, I'll read out the list. So Dre picked Jack Brabham as his number 10. RJ picked Fernando Alonso as his 10.
I'm fucking shocked.
And I picked Rudolph Caracciola as my 10.
Oh, King went old school. Of course he did. That's not a surprise.
So, do we argue it out to see who actually is our number? Like, we only have one number 10.
I will try to. Yeah. I will try to make my point for Alonso. The totality of his achievements, breaking into Formula One as a teenager and wrestling that minority around, sits all time on the Formula One all-time wins list. One of only a handful of drivers to amass 300 starts, the back-to-back world titles, the close calls in 07, 10, and 12. Definitely one of the guys who's regarded as the man who got the most out of subpar equipment. Of course, he made Formula One box office in Spain, where it was just a curiosity beforehand.
Oh.
He also burned McLaren down to the ground after he went back to the like,
take the good with the bad. Take the good with the bad.
Quite the bad, RJ. Like, I went for Brabham. Honestly, I had a hard time. I'm not going to lie to you. Alonso was an honorable mention to potentially keep in the 10 spot compared to the last time I did this list. Where I had Alonso at 10 and I had Hamilton as literally an honorable mention. Spoiler alert, he's a bit higher than that this time.
Things have changed in the last couple of years.
Just a tad. Like, a lot's changed in 5 years. But I went for Brabham. I mean, me personally, I went through this list. I'm a numbers and a stats guy first and foremost, but I also took into account intangibles, things you can't really measure. And Brabham and the power of the brand, the power of winning under his own team, the fact he was the only F1 driver ever to win a Grand Prix in 3 different decades as well, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And what he's done for the brand before crowdfunders ran it into the ground. I think overall, I would personally go with Brabham for his influence in Australia, the Brabham brand and its history and place in F1 history and law. And, again, 3 world championships certainly helps. So that's my argument on that one. King, we've heard your argument 15 times over about the pre-F1 era. But fill him in anyway, because, might as well for the new boys here.
Yeah, so Caracciolo is the only person pre-F1 that I put on my list, mainly because I consider him to be the best from that era. He won 3 European championships. Of the 26 championship Grand Prix he participated in, he won 11. Two away from half the races that he won. He was untouchable in his period to the point where he still holds the record for most German Grand Prix victories, where he has 6 wins while Schumacher and Hamilton are still at 4. There's very few other things you could say. He also, broke the land speed record in a highly modified Grand Prix car. He was the best of his age in an age that people overlook.
And that's a very good point. Though, my point to this would be, Caracciolo is not the name most commonly associated with that pre-war era. That was Tazio Nuvolari. Your argument that Caracciolo, being the superior driver to Nuvolari, who's more the household name from that era.
Well, Nuvolari only won 1 European championship, and he never even came second ever.
Interesting. I've put it to the chat. I'm seeing Brabham's name pop up the most here. I've decided for the first time this is going to be a democracy.
It's going to be a democracy.
Brabham. A couple of votes for Alonso. Brabham. It's close. I'm going to give it to Brabham on this one, looking at the chat.
I have no problems with that. 3-time world champion, won with the constructors in his own championship, and did a lot for race. Again, the Brabham name carried all the way into the early 90s and was winning all the way to the 80s.
True that. I forgot to mention 50s, 60s, 70s was the decades that Brabham won Grand Prix. Apologies for my error on that one.
Incredible.
But yes, Brabham gets the 10 spot.
Fun fact about our 3. All 3 have at least attempted to qualify for the Indianapolis 500.
Neat. Didn't know that one. Fun stuff.
Not familiar with this event.
Not familiar with this event.
It's
never
in character, folks.
Never happened. So, King, number 9.
Number 9, we actually had very close to the same number 9 across the board. He was 9 on your list, 9 on RJ's list, and 8th on my list, Jackie Stewart.
Wow. So I'm actually quite surprised we all had very similar spots on that one. So Jackie Stewart, 3-time world champion, former all-time wins leader, only took part in 99 Grand Prix. I believe he had 27 F1 wins, I want to say.
Yes,
I think it was 27.
By the time he retired, he took the lead from Jim Clark. He was by far and away the best driver of that era. And 2 of the things to note, before he hit his prime with Matra and Tyrrell, he was carrying BRM to heights unforeseen. He had dominant wins, won by 2 laps in Spain in 60. I believe it was 69 where he won by 2 laps in Spain. Won the Nürburgring by 4 minutes, yes, in 68. And of course, if not for an oil leak, he would have won the Indianapolis 500 on a debut year, the year that Graham Hill happened to win it and spark his Triple Crown bid.
Right. But again, like the intangibles is what probably pushed Stewart up a little bit higher than me. He's a member of Mount Nivelt on this podcast for a reason. Another milestone episode number 75 for us back in the day. But his influence when it comes to safety and driver safety and basically pushing his entire career, and obviously after his career as well, after he retired, because he was sick and tired of burying his colleagues and friends. His influence on the sport becoming safer, and to what we know it today, it all started really off the back of Jackie Stewart and his efforts to push that throughout his career and obviously after his career as well. So for me, I personally had him in the 9 spot. I was very tempted to put him even higher up than that in the 8 spot. It was very close between the guy I had 9 and 8 personally. But for me, Stewart in the 9 spot, and again, 9th overall, I got no problem with that whatsoever. We were all pretty much on the same wavelength on that one anyway. So, yeah, Jackie Stewart at the 9 spot, everybody.
Yeah. Next on the list, similar, but you could tell that some people cared about this driver more than others. He was 7th on Dre's list, 8th on RJ's list, and 9th on mine, Niki Lauda.
Niki Lauda. Now, that's the thing. We've got to be very careful on this one because sadly, man has just died. And as we all know, death seems to bring out the more positive tributes when it comes to people, the more maybe emotional side of things when it comes to drivers. And of course, very sadly, we lost Niki only a couple of months ago now. And oh boy, but still a 3-time world champion, a guy that, you know, came back from the most probably horrifying crash one of the most horrifying crashes ever seen in F1. At a time when he was in one of the most famous title fights ever as well. But let's not forget, 3-time world champion. One of the first drivers. I've always admired Lauda, and I put him higher than I normally would on this list looking back, because I've always respected the fact that Niki Lauda was one of the first real F1 drivers who knew his worth. And, you know, was one of the first real big negotiators, negotiated the big contracts for himself. And whatnot, and especially when he came to realizing just how much risk and danger there is in driving these cars. And I've always respected Niki for that, even though he's the first guy to bring up the risk percentages, as anyone that's seen Rush will attest. You know, which again, even Niki himself said was about 90% accurate. So hey, if I'm batting at 90, I don't think that's bad at all, quite frankly. So yeah, Niki Lauda, a remarkable driver, one of the real heroic figures of F1. Obviously, 3-time world champion, another guy in the 20-plus win club.
Keep in mind, he took years off of his career. He retired in 79, came back in 82. So you have to feel like maybe if he hadn't stepped away for those 2 years, how many more wins would he have had? Would he have had a 4th championship? Would he have had a 5th title if not for that crash at the Nürburgring? How much greater could his legacy be? Again, he won his 3rd title in 84 when Alain Prost was the up-and-coming, can't-miss prospect of the future. And that title was decided by half a point. It was the second most incredible comeback of his career.
And he beat Alain Prost in the same car.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive. A transcendent talent, a prime negotiator, a brilliant driver to watch, and one of the real iconic figures of this sport. Niki Lauda, rest easy, buddy. We miss you so bad down here. We really do. Again, as King mentioned, he was 7th on my list personally. I actually had him higher than everybody else did, funnily enough, which is interesting. Which I have a feeling that's going to come up again later, but we'll see how we go on this one. So, King, number 7 next. Yep,
7. So 7 was a bit over the place. So 7 was 8th on your list, Dre. 3rd on RJ's list.
Oh.
And 7th on my list, Jim Clark.
Oh, God. We're going to die. We're going to die.
Die today.
We had Clark 7. And I had Clark the lowest. I had Clark at 8. Yeah. Oh, dear. This needs some explaining. Oh, boy. Shall I explain first? Now,
yes, I'll run down the accolades after you try to defend yourself.
I like when Henry in the chat meeting goes, "Is Zoe here?" Wait for the text.
Like, no, it's not only you have to defend yourself against Zoe, you have to defend yourself against the record books.
Kev says, "Get the pitchforks."
Get the pitchforks.
It's good. Oh boy! Wait till they find out how I put it 6th. I may have leaked that on Twitter last night. More on that later. Now, look, Clark is probably, by all accounts, the greatest driver of his era. Statistically, he's outrageous. Probably by that point in time, only Fangio would have a greater win ratio and magnum opus when it came to the sport.
Not even at that time. Just at that time and still all time, he is 3rd in terms of win rate.
Yeah. Again, it helps that they weren't racing as much back then, but even so, no, like Clark was a monster by all accounts. The problem is I kind of in my head mentally took a couple of points off the table for guys whose careers ended posthumously. Remember this, it becomes important later. But when you don't have a full career, it's hard to scale where you should be. It's hard because,
even though in his shortened career, he has the same amount of Grand Prix victories as Niki Lauda.
King, you had him one spot higher than me. Jesus, it's not like you were clearly thinking in a similar way that I was. You don't think you're exonerated from it. Also,
I'm not saying that he's the greatest of all time. I'm just trying to make a case for it.
Zoe, we have the Hamilton verdict in, by the way, via text message. He says, and I quote, "Don't worry, I gave King a list I did in 5 minutes. Clark goes higher up in racing in general. Making it only F1 makes it harder." Because, it's true. Clark had a bigger influence than just F1 as well. But sadly, this is an F1 only list. But that was the logic as to why I put Clark. It's not because I don't think he was brilliant. He absolutely was. If he had a fully fleshed out career, he'd probably be in the top 5. Deep in the top 5, I reckon. But he died early. It's hard to scale him up compared to other people, especially given, minor spoiler, there are 2 modern-day drivers on this list whose careers are yet fully established as well. I suspect RJ putting him 3rd has probably given him the benefit of the doubt in regards to Clark anyway.
I will put it to you this way. When Jim Clark was with us and before his career came to an end, nobody was a more dominant force in the sport. Yeah, you had Jackie Stewart in the dawn of his amazing career. You had Graham Hill and John Surtees and Dan Gurney. He had great competition. But Jim Clark was the man. You consider that he scored the most amount of championship points you could in a season twice. Only Alberto Ascari did that once. He led 71% of the possible laps you could lead in 1963. He still has the most record for the most Grand Slams. Win, pole position, fastest lap, led every lap.
Yeah, and when he died, he was the all-time wins leader.
Yes, he had just taken it off of Fangio in 68. And tell you this, there was talk that before he passed away, he would have retired early after 68, putting him in the record of 3-time world champions, which would only put him in exclusive category at that point in time with him and Fangio at that point, because Brabham hadn't won his 3rd just yet.
Yep. So I'm not dead.
That's it.
That's good news. Like I said, Clark was 8th on my list. He was 7th on King's. I think RJ gave him the benefit of the doubt in P3.
Just so we know, yes, Zoe did have Clark 7th.
Really? Okay.
And also, Zoe did have Alonso 10th.
Fair enough. Look, I'm not as big a fan of Alonso, but I can understand if somebody put him in their top 10.
So I should just mention, her 8th and 9th don't appear on our list at all. 8th, she had Mika Hakkinen, and 9th, she had Graham Hill.
I would have had no problem with either one of those entries, to be honest.
I think Hakkinen's a bit too high, but Graham Hill, I've always said, is the most underappreciated F1 driver ever, I would argue. So if you had Graham Hill in your top 10, I'm not mad at you. At all. So I think Hakkinen's a little high, but Graham Hill I can certainly get behind. That's absolutely a valid shout on that one. I'm also seeing some of the chat comments here already. It's quite funny. I have Clark 7th too. Someone tell Dre's family a hit's been put out on him. That's Vic. That's oddly calm. Is Zoe okay? Seb or Senna at 6? Question mark. I still maintain Dre is wrong, but he does make good points. That's all I'd like to hear, Jim. Thank you.
So, do you think it's time to move on to the next one?
I think it is.
Because one of the comments is very accurate because 5 and 6 is a tie.
Oh no!
Between 4-time Formula One world champion Sebastian Vettel and 3-time Formula One world champion Ayrton Senna.
Oh fuck no! Oh no! This is the worst possible scenario.
Here's how it breaks down. When it comes to Sebastian Vettel, Dre had him 5th, RJ had him 7th, I had him 4th.
Wow!
It comes,
stop right there before anyone comes after me. King had him even higher than I did.
No Sebastian Vettel supporter Ryan Eric King here.
And the chat has exploded. And 101 is cancelled.
And Senna, both me and Dre had him 6th on our list. RJ had him 4th.
Oh my! So let me get this straight. We now have to sit down and decide between us who has the 5 spot between Sebastian Vettel and Ayrton Senna.
Yes,
it's been nice knowing you, gentlemen. I mean, really, it's been a fun time. Episode 200 is clearly going to be our last.
It was so fun while it lasted.
I'll remember you all in therapy.
Zoe is like. Do we have Zoe break the tie? Because she literally just texted me saying I had Vettel 5th and Senna 6th. Tiebreaker sorted.
Nah, that's a cop out.
Let's argue the case for both, shall we? I'll tell you my case for Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel, of course, 4 world championships, nothing to scoff at. 2 dominant championship victories, including 9 wins in a row to end the 2013 season when Vettel was at his peak. But he also won close ones in 2010 and 2012. And you could argue that his dominance over the sport with Red Bull goes all the way back to the second half of 2009. Because if Braun had not gotten that hot start, Vettel probably would have overhauled them to become world champion in 2009.
That's fair to say.
And I would say as well that, he of course is still chasing that 5th title, but you've seen him spurts in 15, 17, and 18. He still has the motivation to match Prost and Hamilton and get closer to his idol, Michael Schumacher. That would be my case for Sebastian Vettel, in my opinion. We're talking Ayrton Senna. Yes, we're talking about perhaps the greatest F1 folk hero of all time. 41 victories by the time he passed away, 2nd all time in Formula One. Most career pole positions, one of only a handful of men who's won 3 world championships. He's the driver who stood out as by far the most explosive talent of his generation. He was a winner in all of his 9 straight full seasons from 85 to 1993. And think about this. We talk about his great rivalry with Prost, the championships of 88, 90, and 91. But I would make a case that before his untimely death, Senna was getting better. Because think about all of his signature drives. 91 in Brazil when he was 31. 92 at Monaco when he was 32 years old. 93 at Donington when he was 33 and basically driving on a race-to-race deal. There's a chance to be made that if not for his untimely death, and that's why he's so revered so highly, is because they felt like his best was still yet to come.
But then you get into speculatory, speculatory thinking,
Yeah,
where it's
that's
you're thinking about what he could have done, not what he actually has done.
And the totality of his work is still mightily impressive.
Yeah, it's still very impressive. Very, very impressive.
I mean, let's get to the chase. You know which way I'm going to swing on this one. We know which way RJ swung on it. He went towards Ayrton. I'm going the other way. Sebastian Vettel is the modern-day antithesis of what we hate about F1 now, and that's Hamilton's dominance. It all started with Sebastian, whether it be fairly or unfairly, how he was treated during those times. Brackets, mostly unfairly, if you ask me. But he is... I think he's one of the fastest drivers we've ever seen. I think I think for a good... And I'd say for a good 6 years from 2008 when he had that breakthrough win for Toro Rosso in Italy all the way through till 2013, he was on track to have a career greater than anyone's the sport's ever seen, quite frankly. It's bad when you're single-handedly getting blamed for quote-unquote killing the sport because of how good he was. And yeah, he's had a couple of blips since 2014. We can't ignore with Daniel Ricciardo and getting used to the V6 hybrids. Although I could argue he atoned for those sins later on with brilliant seasons in 2015 and 2017 for Ferrari before some bad luck and generally an uncompetitive Ferrari in the case of 15 got in the way. He's not having a particularly great year this year, but then again, not many people in red are at the moment, so, to be honest. Last year, I think, was the first really super questionable season that Sebastian's had. Ayrton, look, Ayrton is such a polarizing guy in the sense of, like I said before, it's like how I came to my list is intangibles are a factor. And when it comes to intangibles, Ayrton Senna is off the goddamn scale in terms of how you perceive it. Because, again, he died young, relatively young at 94. He died in his prime. He probably would have won at least one more world title with Williams had he stuck it out there for a little bit longer, I'd argue. And a lot of it is folklore and the stuff we look up in the dictionary when we look at what a racing driver is. Ayrton fits that modern-day mold of a racing driver that fans love about this sport. And that's precisely why I think he's overrated slightly. Because there's a lot of people who, if you ask, swear he's the greatest thing to happen to F1 since sliced bread. Because he taps into that emotional side that we have as sports fans. A lot more than Sebastian's ever done. As I said, I'm a numbers guy. I don't think you can put Senna above Sebastian on any factor besides what could have been. Or entertainment value, and that's subjective.
So, running down the numbers, obviously, Vettel has one championship over Senna. In terms of, like, if we try to even it out and make it based on just percentage of podium finishes, it's actually very close, where Sebastian is just above 50% for finishing on the podium, and Senna is just barely under. Actually, on the all-time list, they're 8th and 9th on the all-time percentage list for podium finishes. I think it's the other way around in terms of percentage race wins, where it's like on a lot of the just being consistently good over the course of your entire career, Vettel's just better, but Senna's career is a lot more highlights, where it's like
an icon more
than
in terms he's iconic. He is still remembered probably as the second greatest Brazilian sportsman behind Pele, for crying out loud.
So besides like the peak Vettel seasons, what I mean in terms of highlights, like in terms of wins, like in terms of records within the period of a single season, Senna has like most of them.
You know what? It's our 200th show. I'm going to do something truly altruistic here. I'm going to concede my position on this one.
No, I take Vettel 5th over. I take Vettel 5th over Senna. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. I was going to take one for the team and flip it, but
nope. I don't think I really wouldn't be able to concede that like comfortably.
I had to make my own lists. I mean, honestly, I'm not too ticked off either way.
You know what? 2-1 majority. It goes to Sebastian. Sebastian gets 5th. Ayrton Senna 6th. The majority rules. It's you know, a lot of it is political. A lot of it is what it could be. Versus it's the numbers guy versus the entertainment guy, and the guy that tapped into people's hearts as I think more as a driver. I like to think with this a little bit more than I think with that personally, but I get it. It's very, very close. This is the sort of thing that will split fans completely down the middle, and that's fun, quite frankly. So, yeah, we're gonna have Sebastian 5th and Ayrton Senna 6th on this occasion. But again, if you have it the other way around, blame King. He had Vettel higher in the first place anyway.
Now, you can't blame me for the next one, because 4th, only one person here voted him to be 4th.
I see. And I don't think that person was me. So
it was you. Dre had him 4th. Me and RJ had him 5th. Alain Prost.
You guys shitting on Prost? How dare you?
I want to make a point here that he doubled the all-time wins record that he had took from Jackie Stewart by the end of his career.
Yeah, he doubled the all-time wins record. He got within... Well, yeah, he doubled the all-time wins record. He got within one championship away of, Juan Manuel Fangio, with, at the time, people thought it was a tremendous achievement.
Right.
He had 10 consecutive winning seasons from 81 to 90.
Yeah, there was, the second half of his career, he only dropped out of the top 2 of the championship twice. Between his final year in 93 and then going back to 83. He had a 10-year run where he was arguably the pound-for-pound king. Prost, I think, I think Prost was a thinking man's driver, and I have great respect for that, especially in a sport where, again, we think with this, and more often with down there, as opposed to with this. And Alain Prost was Mr. Political. He was the professor. He was a guy that would get the calculator out mid-race and work out what, you don't need to push and win the Grand Prix every single time to win a championship.
But he won a lot of Grand Prix.
Yeah,
51.
Yeah, 51. And just besides winning a lot, he finished on the podium a lot. And I think if I could pull that list back up again for podium percentage, it is ridiculously high. Actually, where is it? He is actually 5th. He's 5th on the all-time podium percentage list. That's if you have a minimum of 50 race entries. If you just took out everyone with less than 50, he would be second. No, he would be he'd be 3rd on the list behind Fangio and Hamilton.
And another thing, Prost pretty much ran the gauntlet when it came to having ridiculously good teammates, and he beat them all at least at one point or another. He is beaten at some point just about every other major name in the top 15 list at some point in his career in the same machinery. Prost is a monster.
Alongside with his 4 world championships, he's finished 2nd in the championship 4 times as well.
Right, and think about this. Some of them could have been flipped. He only lost 83 by 2 points to Piquet, by a half a point to Lauda in 84. And while he's classified 2nd with 87 points, if all results counted in 88, that's Prost's title and not Senna's.
Yep. The infamous drop rule. Yeah. The infamous drop rule.
Literally, on technicalities, he could have been a 7-time world champion.
It wouldn't have taken very much at all. There's a very valid case you could have Prost even higher than this, but the problem is the top 3 guys above him, who I think the top 3 is going to be, are monsters. They all have valid claims, I think, to be the number 1 we've ever seen.
Based on our voting, they all have very valid claims.
If it's the 3 I think it is, then yeah, I think so too. But Alain Prost, again, I got a Zoe text. You all underscored Prost. Well, I underscored him the least, so
Just so everyone knows, Zoe had Prost 2nd.
Fair enough.
That is
fair enough. So shout out to Colton Dango, who gave us a 79p donation. Thank you very much, sir. Very much appreciated.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. So, top three. This is where things are going to get interesting.
The top three, I'm just going to read out who the top three are. And we'll talk about the top three. Then I'll reveal where everyone voted on the top three and where they fell on the consensus list.
Right.
So the top three, in no particular order, are Lewis Hamilton, Juan Manuel Fangio, and Michael Schumacher.
No real surprises there. Thank God. I was worried for a second that someone might have snuck in. Yeah, I think if Mount Rushmore only had three heads, I think this is the three where it would be going with. Now, for me, Lewis Hamilton is the modern day kingpin of Formula One. He has now, I'd argue, the most unbeatable car and driver combination we've ever seen in this sport. Maybe even more than Schumacher at Ferrari. Because, don't get me wrong, Schumacher and Ferrari had a couple of seasons where they were busted, but nothing like this, where he is literally destroying everybody, even people in the same car on occasions. Like, Valtteri got absolutely curb stomped by him last season. And don't get me wrong, that wasn't all entirely Valtteri's fault. But Hamilton is probably going to break every major record in the book by the time it's all said and done, if this car holds out till the end of the next set of regulations, which is the end of next season. And even then, I think Mercs have got so much money and so many resources, I don't think they're going to screw up enough, even after a regulation change, to take them off the top. It will take a monumental shift for that to happen. Hamilton, 70-plus wins, 86 pole positions. I mean, he's probably going to have world title number 6 at the end of this year. There's a valid case you can make for him being number 1 now. And I won't tell you just yet where I had Hamilton personally, but that's like, he's ridiculous. He's a modern day monster, and he is what I think everybody wants their leading driver in F1 to be, if he didn't put his foot in his mouth so much. But hey, that's, you know.
That's also the thing as well, because Lewis Hamilton is the dominant champion of the social media age. For better or worse, he is engaged in all of that stuff. He has more crossover appeal than anybody else. And should I add, he is a driver who represents a populace that is not often represented at this level of motorsport in any variety. He is box office. He is absolutely... And he is an icon that transcends the numbers, and his numbers are incredible. I know he inherited a very good situation to start his career, but in 13 seasons, he has won at least one race in all of them. And keep in mind, some of those weren't gimmies. Started 2009 on bad terms. Only got the one win in Mercedes when he hit the control out the lead in his career.
Indeed.
And he's had good teammates too. Alonso, Button among them. Rosberg, yes.
Rosberg. Guys, all three of those guys are, you know, top 15 to 25, I'd say at worst. You know, he's had a good run of teammates as well. What about Schumacher?
Schumacher, what hasn't been said about Schumacher? He is the statistical peak. There's, in terms of, well, he's the statistical peak for now, I should say, and has been for over a decade.
He broke Formula One. I can remember being in the sport and just wishing anybody else would win, because that's how good he was. 5 consecutive world championships with Ferrari after winning 2 with Benetton. But the thing was, with that Ferrari dynasty, he had to come in and he had helped to change the culture of a team that had completely lost his way. And he was the architect of a dynasty. He had 15 consecutive winning seasons, getting 91 victories. And the way he did it was so astounding. He took 300-kilometer Formula One races and broke them down into 3 or 4 75 to 100-kilometer super sprints on low fuel, and he just buried the field into dust.
As RJ said, he broke Formula One. I've always argued this. If you wanted to create a Frankenstein's monster of what an F1 driver would look like, it would probably end up looking something like Michael Schumacher.
Nobody had his fitness at the time that he came in. Nobody had his dedication. Remember all the stories about him taking 10, 12-hour work days at the Ferrari test track in Fiorano when you could do unlimited testing, because that's the kind of dedication that he had.
He was the blueprint of what Formula One is now. When it comes to driver ability, when it comes to maximizing resources, again, from a fitness standpoint to a work rate standpoint to a dedication standpoint, this was still in the era when he was coming through, when guys like Mansell would do a couple of test laps and then be off to the golf course by 3 o'clock. And we had Schumacher that was doing workouts and weights and being ridiculously fit. The way he broke down these massive races into qualifying sessions, outrageous raw speed, maybe the best we've ever seen in that department, quite frankly. Ruthless aggression, which, hey, ultimately cost him on a couple of occasions, but you could see what he was
trying to do. How much do you deduct for those incidents in Adelaide in 94, in Jerez in 97? How much do you weight that against Senna's incidents, like in Japan in 1990?
Right. It's Michael Schumacher, for me, was the god of Formula One when I first started watching. And I started back in 99. You can probably guess where I put him, but you'll find out very shortly where that was. But for me, he is the modern-day blueprint of the Formula One we know today. And let's not forget, he had a major role in what the Mercedes empire would now become with Hamilton. It's easy to forget the influence that Schumacher had on Ross Brawn and had on that team and what turned them into the dominant winners we are today. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but Schumacher absolutely had a role in that too. He was a incredible influence on the sport. He was one of the most transcendent stars that I think Formula One has ever had. He's in the top 2 or 3 where that's concerned.
And that comeback in 2010 to 2012, I know he didn't win a race, but nobody's counting Jordan's Wizards tenure against him as the greatest player of all time, right?
No, and we will always have that qualifying lap at Monaco in 2012. A bit more proof that the guy still had a bit of genius in him left. I will hold on to that one for a while. Keep fighting, Michael. We miss you. But where do we rank Fangio on this one?
It's hard to say, but statistically, Fangio's still mightily impressive. Like, obviously, due to how the F1 was formatted back then, most races were non-championship races. So his in terms of, wins, doesn't look as impressive. But on a race
he won nearly half the Grand Prix he ever entered.
Yeah, he won half the Grand Prix. He won 60% of the Grand Prix he's ever entered.
Jesus.
40% in championship standings alone. Highest percentage of pole positions, front row starts. And all this was in his 40s. Again, we just talked about Schumacher having that one pole lap in his 40s. Well, Fangio was killing it this time.
Yeah,
and
pretty much his tenure in F1 was at the end of his career.
Yeah. And he was the first real car hopper that we saw travel to car and prove he could win in anything, essentially. His talent was transcendent of cars at the time. You put him in anything, he's going to win in it. He knew he had the nous of when to jump over at the right time. And
he never finished lower than second in the championship.
In a full season in which he competed. Throw out 58. That was his swan song year. From 50, and keep in mind, he skipped a year in 52 due to internal politics, because some of those early years in Formula One were not run to Formula One regulations. And that's how he ended up missing 52. But he came back, won with Mercedes, won with Ferrari, won with Maserati, won with Alfa Romeo. That's 4 different teams. And for nearly half a century, he was the only man at 5 championships.
Yeah. Oof. The problem with Fangio, most of us who was able to see him at his best are now probably dead. And that's the sad reality.
Most people didn't get to see him because this was before Grand Prix racing was on TV. You had to go to the races in person.
And that's the problem. Like, it's hard to talk about a guy that was in his peak 60 years ago. 70 years ago, I'd actually argue now, quite frankly. So that's the question mark with Fangio.
But to be honest, you can make the same case for Prost and Senna too.
True. That is also true. It depends on how old you are. We are a bunch of 20-somethings doing this podcast. A lot of us that are commenting are older than that. You know, you be the judge. Speaking of which, King, I think it's time.
What's the numbers? Okay, so third. He was second on your list, Ray. 6th on RJ's, and number 1 on mine, Juan Manuel Fangio.
Get RJ up out the paint. 6th?
So back just to scroll back to early in the episode, 3rd on RJ's list was Jim Clark.
You had Clark 3 spots higher than Fangio.
I did. Clark's level of competition was higher. Fangio was clear-cut in a way the most dominant driver of his era. So was Jim Clark against better competition with more prepared teams. That's my justification. But I had no problem having Juan Manuel Fangio and anybody stopped.
I don't know if I'd say more prepared teams, because Clark's era was, the beginning of the era of the Grastis days with the British privateer teams, while Fangio raced in, the last era of the big factory manufacturer teams that we would see until the 90s and Schumacher bringing the factories back.
Good news, guys. Resi's cancelling his Patreon upon hearing this. RJ's literally taking food off the table. Congrats, RJ. Fangio's Jesus, wow. Okay. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed, and especially if you're a long-time listener, Fangio used to be my number 1. I have since changed my pick. You'll find out why in a minute. Carry on, King.
There are 2 left on the board. So once I say who number 2 is, everyone will know who number 1 is. Second, he was 3rd on Dre's list, 3rd on my list, and only 2nd on RJ's list, Lewis Hamilton.
Wait, I'm now on a podcast we've just declared Lewis Hamilton as the 2nd best driver ever. This burns.
Hey, there are only 2 spots left, Dre. How would you have felt it if he was number 1?
I'd have killed everyone in their sleep. Everyone.
Okay.
But yeah, go on.
As a note, for Dre had Fangio 2nd.
Which means...
Yes. 1st on RJ's list, 1st on Dre's list, 2nd on mine because I had Fangio number 1. Michael Schumacher.
Yes, kids, I changed my mind. And the kicker was, and it's for a simple reason, I got to watch Schumacher race. And that emotional bond...
That's very biased.
It is. It is. I don't care who knows it. I'm a 90s kid. It's hard for me to lean away to lean away from the guy that got me into the sport in the first place. And Michael, again, Fangio is a phenomenal fucking driver.
Mercedes 1, 2, 3.
He was a phenomenal driver, and he did it in an era where one crash very well could have been your last, quite frankly. And it's hard to ever put it on the right scale, but for me, Schumacher is the guy that it boils down to as, I think, the modern-day influencer of Formula One that we know and love today. That was why I had Schumacher number 1 on my list, personally.
I had him number 1 for all the same reasons. He was the statistically the most dominant driver of his era. He was the most dedicated driver of his era. He turned Ferrari into the winning dynasty that they always envisioned themselves and have still had trouble replicating since he stopped racing for them. And you always wonder, if not for the flip of a few coins, could he have had more success? And he already has unprecedented success up to this point.
When the sport actively goes out of its way to make sure you don't win anymore, I think it's fair to say you could very well be the greatest driver we've ever seen. And that, for me, is why I think Schumacher is the greatest. King, you're the only guy that still stands on the Fangio train. God bless you. There's a bit more legroom in that train of yours.
Yeah.
Not a bad case you can make at all. Like remember, I used to be right along here with you. But
like,
you know,
I wonder how it's gonna be when Lewis comes along and derails this train.
To be fair, like Lewis said as well, Michael was his number one as well, and I'm seeing some of the comments as well. He's the reason I feel like, again, Lewis in the chat, I'm unashamedly biased when it comes to MSC. He's the reason I fell in love with F1. Period.
It's like I love Schumacher, but I just love Fangio a little bit more.
And that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely valid. In case you didn't see it, Zoe just texted me her full list from 10 to 1. Alonso, Graham Hill, Hakkinen, Clark, Senna, Vettel 5, Hamilton 4, Schumacher 3.
Whoa. Yeah.
Schumacher 3 behind Prost and Fangio at 1. I think King had a heart attack just listening to that part of the list.
Yeah, just listening to it, because she sent me the list like I think a couple of hours ago.
Did we get a list from Johnson?
No, Johnson didn't send in the list.
Damn.
Bummer.
Damn.
But I mean, that is our list. Just before we get out of here, a few words from me. It is 11:27 p.m. UK time, so it means we're actually right on schedule, roughly. Just as always with the M101 Fort train. Also, Zoe says in Tim Captain, I did it in 5 minutes. Whatever you say, darling.
Whatever helps you sleep at night.
I also I want to get some of the comments and people who tweeted me saying what some of their favorite M101 moments are over the last 200 shows. James Galantis, who's a fantastic Patreon backer, said, just want to congratulate Dre, King, and O'Connell and all other guests, host, and everyone involved in M101 for the big double century. Been listening since the start and back in around the corner days. Wow, that is a throwback. Around the corner, wow. Congrats, and you guys deserve it. I said some of your favorite moments. Dre's mental breakdown as he hears the Autosport top 50. Yeah, that's fair.
Can't wait for it again this year.
But a very recent one from when I literally said "fuck me sideways," and then RJ goes, "Happy Pride Month, everyone!"
Pride Month, everybody. We're angry.
Yes, indeed. Chris Cook screwing Dre in the first month of the Motorsport draft. We don't talk anymore. But the best moment is the shag, marry, kill segment between Senna, Verstappen, and David Croft from episode 63. I remember the exact number. A couple of you guys mentioned this one as well. I quote, "I'll shag Senna because of his passion." Dre 2016. Never forget, everybody. In the comments, guys, below, list off some of your favorites. I'll see if I can get some of them in before we go off the air. Saying, I got Vagelis as well saying here, well, this time I'm not going with any funny moments, but you with something that stuck with me. Started listening in the middle of 2016, and you were the only ones who actually tried to give Rosberg some credit. That spoke to me. Okay, I lied. King's Wickens joke during the awards was epic. Oh dear. Saying here. Dre doing press ups for F1 2013 career mode. Oh god, that was a bad time.
I had a question that my partner proposed to me. Isla Mert, who's in the chat.
Yes.
What do you envision happening over in good health and motivation willing? What do you think will happen? What we'll see in the next 100 episodes of Motorsport 101? It's about 2 years.
That is a tremendous question. It is another 2 years. I don't know. I would love to be able to maybe get more coverage from motorsport events themselves. I mean, we've got King going out to the Formula E season finale in New York very soon with our name badge on it. It's great, which is awesome. I would love to get more live content. I'd like to make videos again full time, but juggling a shift-based job working in the bookies, it's very, very hard because it's difficult on that one because I want to make more videos. I love. I had a little bit of a mini resurgence earlier this year, and you guys seem to really, really like it. And I'm very, very glad you guys have. You guys seem to really like it when I just talk off the cuff about this sport in general, and most of the sports I end up covering. I mean, when I can get 500 videos on a World Superbikes video, that is incredible, to say the least. I don't know. I don't know what else we can do, but we'll come up with ideas, and we'll always listen to things. And I just want to keep going more than anything else because this show is an endless source of enjoyment for me. Hearing you guys reel off your favorite moments and, guys that listen to us every single week, it's an incredible privilege. And I just want to do more and more and more and anything else. And, these things are the stuff you hold on to, and that's fantastic more than anything else. I don't know what the next 100 episodes will bring, God willing, but that's part of the fun, not knowing what's going on, what's going to happen in the future, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. So let's just see where this bad boy goes, because it's been 5 years and whatnot. Couple other comments I wanted to get through here real quick on the Twitter account. Conrad was a very glowing tribute. Thank you for that, Conrad. I did read that. That's very, very kind of you, sir. Already seen arguments with Zoe in the chat already as well, seeing that as well on Twitter as well. Vic says, seriously, though, thank me.
10 out of 10. That was a good moment.
that was a good one. But that's 10 out of 10. That was a good one. That was a good shout there, Andrew. Very good shout. Being a resident cheerleader on Day of Classics was my highlight of the year. So Dre said, Sharon said, check the Discord for mine. It's
Jenna Fry reaction. It's May.
Oh yeah. Oh, Zoe's reaction when Will Power won the 500 was legendary as well. I think she actually broke that day. There's been so many memories I can even list off. It's been,
the fight after Las Vegas where we referenced that.
Still one of our favorite moments. I remember Matt was on the show, bless him. He pissed himself going through that segment. It was hilarious. If you guys have got any other favorite moments on the show you want to reel off, now's a good time. Anything else sticks out in you guys' minds over the last 4 years and 200 episodes? Speak and now forever hold your peace again.
I got into my feelings a couple of times. There was the bad time I got into my feelings after that whole unpleasantness happened with Santucci and Formula 2 at Silverstone. There was another time I got into my feelings after Danny Watson came out. That was kind of my public coming out on the podcast. And I think that meant a lot to a lot of people, which was
absolutely
astonishing. And, that does mean a lot too.
I mean,
impact.
It's the beauty of keeping it 101. It was like that still is one of my favorite Drapery videos I ever made, was talking about Danny Watts, and I've always tried to make M101 as safe a platform as possible for anyone who listens. Everybody is welcome here, from silly things like buying multicolored trainers in the background, you can see the box right there, to just, being proud of the fact we have a show that doesn't necessarily stick to sports, that's unafraid to tackle areas that a lot of people will choose to ignore. And that's one of the things that makes me incredibly proud to have this platform in the first place. And, it goes so much further than motorsport sometimes, because it has so much crossover into everyday life. And that's part of the beauty of it. If we can be a safe 90 minutes of listening every week for someone, then my mission is my mission as a podcast host and all round motorsport shit poster. I don't like calling myself a journalist. I never really consider myself that, because I'm not one of these guys that's actually in the trenches.
We don't take ourselves too seriously here.
Never have. Never will.
All the time to keep it serious, but we're not going to take ourselves too seriously on the whole.
Yeah, the shoot your shot episode from Tokyo. Episode 75. Oh dear. And yeah, Adam Johnson's restraining order on Laura Trott. Yes, I am a Pats fan as well, Cotton. Yes, the jersey's in the back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Exposing Joe Sayward and making me learn not to value his work. The auction draft. Yeah, the Centennial episode 100. Said some of my favorite moments were the ones I had to cut out, said Lewis. See last year's bloopers for information. You know, again, we could go on for another hour about this. But just from words from me, more to wrap it up, I think more than anything else, because we've been going for nearly 3 hours, bless us. But it's episode 200. Who gives a shit?
We got halfway to the limit.
Halfway there.
Like, guys, let's watch an old Indy 500.
Woo! We got time. We got time.
Oh man, I actually suggested that we could do like an F1 race if we had the logistics. Sadly, it couldn't happen, and I also whipped out the chip challenge. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. But no, like as for those guys who are newer to the show who didn't know, this again, I've said it before. This whole show started out as a university project for my final year of my degree in broadcast journalism. I've always wanted to do a podcast. This was the end product. I had my good friend, and I know she's out there listening. She's a very, very dear friend, Stephanie Hunter, who, in case you didn't know, runs Silvercode, who runs the website. It's a beautiful site. I'm very, like she said it herself, it's one of the sites she's most proud of having. And she's become a very good friend. If you actually scroll deep enough on my Instagram, you'll actually find the fact, because she's from New Zealand originally, but she was in the UK, and I finally got to meet her earlier this year, and she's one of the nicest people you could ever wish to meet. So special shout out to her. But this was a university project gone very badly wrong. This was only ever meant to be 10 episodes. And yet, here we are, 200 shows later. And it's been an unbelievable ride. We've seen so much change in motorsport, in life, in the last 5 years, and you know we've all grown up a little bit as well in that time as well. We've all gotten a little bit better at this. We've all gotten a little bit older, a little bit wiser, a little bit angrier as well, you know. And we've all found ourselves a little bit more, I think, through the medium of this show. And I couldn't be prouder of what we've accomplished so far. Over 100,000 plays from guys over 100 different countries, the comments that we get, the fans that we have, the fans that I don't even call them fans because I don't have fans. We have friends, quite frankly, and they are an incredible set of people. And I personally am honored to be the lead presenter of this more than anything else. But there is so much more behind the scenes that you guys don't even get to see, that have influences on the show, that's made us get to this point. And you know, from Johnson, who was the reason this project kicked off the ground in the first place, because I mentioned it before on the website earlier this year. I had a breakdown towards the end of my time as Harrison 101 on YouTube. It was too much. I couldn't stand the fact that I was grinding away at numbers and trying to chase something that wasn't there, trying to be an F1 YouTuber. And this was my salvation. And if it wasn't for me and Johnson the day after my brother's 21st, like 18th birthday, you know, back then I would never have, you know, rebooted this podcast and made it the full-time venture we've now made it, alongside anything else. So Johnson, I owe him everything. For even getting to this point, for having the motivation, alongside obviously Ryan, to Zoe Hamilton, who's been a massive and incredible super sub over the last couple of years, and her presence is very much missed on this show by any stretch of the imagination. To Lewis, who had the balls to take Bike Live off Downforce and bring it on with us, and as well as editing a ton of our shows in the past as well. I think over 100 of them by the time it was all said and done. And he's now living the dream out there in Barcelona as a MotoGP. So some of the tweets you'll see during MotoGP races are literally him, and he's become a friend for life, and he's living the dream, and I couldn't be prouder of him. So Lewis, I know you're listening. Thank you so much, man, for everything. to get to this point. Special thanks as well to everyone that's backed us financially on Patreon. The fact that you guys can even go out of your way to think, hey, you guys are worthy of money. It's one thing to listen. It's another thing to actually back us. Oh, God. Getting a bit emotional back here. But
it's all right. You got as much room as you can.
No, I'm going to get through this one way or another because that's what you guys want me to see. But the guys you guys are, think we're worth financially backing. The fact this podcast is self-sufficient, thanks to you guys, is the greatest honor you could possibly have on us. We don't have to worry about dipping our own hands in our pockets, even though we have on occasion to even get it to this point. And I'd love to see how far we can take it down the road. But your faith and constant belief in us has been legendary, and couldn't ask for a better set of friends and people and community in general. But thanks to all the special guests we've had over the years as well, because we've had a ton of those. Cam, Hazel, Zoe, Elizabeth, Katie Fairman, who's doing a brilliant job out there representing Formula E. She's fantastic. She's got her own show now as well on Small Talk. Go listen. Shout out to guys like Scott Woodward back in the past, who's been part of our shows before. Again, we're very, very lucky that people want to come on our show and even just shoot the shit about motorsport in the environment that we have. But special thanks to my two colleagues and two of the best friends I could ever have, and that's Ryan and RJ. And RJ hopped on the wagon late, but I've known King for nearly 8 years now. It was 2011 we followed each other on Twitter, and I think it's fair to say that I don't think we'd ever get to this position, because he had his own show with Athlete VG back in the day, and he stuck around with me, and there would be no M101 without King, without any shadow of a doubt. And RJ has fit this show like a glove, and it was hard when we lost Johnson, because he wanted to go out there and find himself as a person, and I will never hold that against him in a million years. But RJ has been wonderful as a host, and we couldn't do it without him either. And he had so much personality, life, and character. He got it from day one, and he makes the show better than it ever could be. More than anything else, but. Lastly, thank you, all of you, for... I'm going to get through this. Thank you all so much for inviting us into your homes and giving us a chance and giving us your time. It's been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life. And without you, there is no us. So thank you for giving us all the chance. And I couldn't be prouder of what we got. And I hope it continues to grow in the future. I really do. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much. It's been an amazing ride. And here's to the next 100, as far as I'm concerned. So, because we are sure as hell not stopping now. We'll be back next week because we've got IndyCar in Toronto, and I think MotoGP's back at the Saxon Ring as well.
Yes, we do. But, World Superbikes at Donington, DTM and W Series at the Norris Ring, NASCAR Daytona.
Well, I think it is just DTM at the Norris Ring with the W Series, because IndyCar 2 weeks time, as well as New York City Prix and the British Grand Prix.
And I think that just about does it for episode 200 of Motorsport 101. Places you can find us one more time. YouTube.com. I mean, come on, if you're watching this, you already know what the deal is. YouTube.com/Motorsport 101. Subscribe for all our latest stuff. Ring the bell to get notifications, all that good stuff. Facebook.com/Motorsport 101. Twitter Again, handles are all below. Again, Motorsport 1_101 for the app itself. M101, motorsport101.com. Again, if you want to check all our written stuff as well, and everything we have is on that page as well. And of course, if you really, really like us, you can back us financially. Patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our shows. $10 gets you into the supporters club of our Discord server. And you can listen to these shows live as they go out. And again, special thanks to my colleagues, to everyone that's still tuning in. It's nearly midnight back here in the UK, and you guys are still here. You guys are barnacle heads, but I do love every single one of you. Thank you all so much for the last 200 shows, and here's to the next 200. I've been Andre Harrison on behalf of RJ O'Connell, Ryan King, Adam Johnson, Zoe Hamilton, Christopher DeHarday, Cam Buckley, and all our other co-hosts and all our other friends and yours. Thank you for letting us in for 200 shows. Here's to the next 100. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Bye.